Chapter 51. The puppet's movements seemed very rigid, like a machine without emotion. Shinobu Koko immediately used stabbing, and she didn't even use her sword skills. After all, it is not certain whether there are living people in the puppets. Killing demons is definitely not allowed. In a flash, the lion puppet's sword was picked up and Kiritani Sento took the opportunity to cut the line connecting the puppet and the balloon. Unexpectedly, the puppet's movements did not stop. The puppet that was out of control stubbornly pulled off the hood, revealing the Black Demon Slayer uniform. Kiritani Sento and Shinobu Koko took a breath of cold air. Fortunately, they didn't cut from the neck at the beginning, otherwise they would have killed the right side. It seems that the missing swordsmen are all here, and the number of puppets is also correct. Kiritani Sento took a deep breath, and then immediately used the land-type wheel flame dance, and the leaping flames drew a beautiful arc under the moonlight. In just a few breaths, Kiritani Sento had reached the end of the remaining 14 swordsmen, and all the balloons burst. The controlled swordsmen were like cars without motors, losing their power source. Koko Shinobu immediately went to check on everyone, and fortunately everyone was still alive. Koko Shinobu breathed a sigh of relief. As a doctor, the greatest reward for her was that the patient could survive. Koko Shinobu gave Kiritani Sento a thumbs up and said with a smile, "They are still alive." As soon as Koko Shinobu finished speaking, the originally stagnant swordsmen began to move one after another. Unlike at the beginning, they used sword skills. Water breathing, flame breathing, wind breathing, thunder breathing. The colorful fighting spirit bloomed behind Koko Shinobu like fireworks, and the sword skills of each swordsman were full of murderous intent. But they were sober. If they killed their fellow disciples, they would never forgive themselves for this sin. Some swordsmen shed tears of regret. All they could do now was to cry. Kiritani Sento immediately flashed behind Koko Shinobu, and the winding of the 4 types of Shenjun bloomed on his blade. 16 sun wheel swords collided at the same time. Although the strength of those swordsmen was not very strong, there were also A-class swordsmen. The collision and friction of metals sparked bursts of sparks. Kiritani Sento roared and bounced away 15 sun wheel swords. "Thank you." A very small and light voice sounded. This was the swordsman's thanks. Kiritani Sento prevented them from making a mistake that would make them regret for the rest of their lives. Kiritani Sento straightened his body and swung his sword at the air like thunder, because under the cover of the night, tiny spores floated in the air. This was also the reason why the swordsmen were manipulated again. The stagnation just now was probably to let himself and Shinobu relax their vigilance. "This damned old six, if you have the guts, you should fight head-on." Under the swing of the breath of fire, all the spores in the air were burned to ashes. Kiritani Sento threw out 15 hand knives directly, and those swordsmen lost their ability to move instantly. Although it is not certain whether the balloon spores can control the fainted people, it is better to give it a try. Sure enough, the fallen swordsman did not stand up again. It seems that the spores can only control awake people. "Rabbit, hurry, get out of the way." Koko Shinobu's trembling voice sounded, and then the sharp blade like a sting pierced through Kiritani Sento's left shoulder. Kiritani Sento frowned and clenched his teeth. He really didn't expect that Shinobu would be controlled. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Koko Shinobu kept apologizing in a crying voice. A red balloon floated on her shoulder. If it weren't for her strong will, it would be Kiritani Sento's heart that was pierced. Shinobu Koko drew out the sun wheel sword, but the movement in her hand did not stop. Kiritani Sento used the wheel flame dance to dodge the opponent's attack. He was looking for an opportunity to cut off the balloon, but he didn't dare because the color of the balloon was different from that of others. "This time, I didn't think about it. The enemy was in the dark. This time, I was completely passive. Damn it." While dodging Shinobu Koko's attack, Kiritani Sento retreated to the back, and soon the two came to the starting point of the amusement park roller coaster. The overall golden roller coaster lay quietly on the track, and the front of the car was in the shape of Mickey Mouse. "Rabbit, cut it down quickly, I don't want to hurt you anymore." "Sorry." Shinobu Koko knew what Kiritani Sento was hesitating about. After all, her current state was different from other swordsmen. Others had a vague consciousness, but her brain was exceptionally clear. If the spores parasitized on her, Kiritani Sento would cut herself without hesitation, but Shinobu Koko couldn't do it. Just as the two of them were chasing each other, the originally cute the front of the Mickey Mouse car instantly changed its skin. The front of the roller coaster turned into that weird smiley face. The big mouth stretched to the ears, and the rows of sharp teeth were like a shark. The big eyes with blood were engraved with the words lower string and 1. It was the one of the lower string, Crazy Spore. It had already merged with the roller coaster in the amusement park. It was originally planning to gather enough children to devour, but who knew that the human in the amusement park suddenly lost connection, and then the pillar came. Hee hee hee. Go to hell, pillar. The roller coaster accelerated and crashed towards the direction of Kiritani Battle Rabbit and Coco Shinobu. The originally quiet roller coaster came to life, and it was confirmed that the component was Lao Lu. Crazy Spore increased the speed to the maximum, and shouted proudly, "My blood demon art death roller coaster is not to be underestimated, die!" Kiritani Sento pushed Coco Shinobu away, grasped the sun wheel sword, and his fighting spirit burned like a flame, the final form of the breath of fire purgatory. The surging fire tornado collided with the speeding roller coaster. Even if it was out of the pipe, the roller coaster had the weight to crush ordinary people. Kiritani Sento was pushed back more than 10 meters by Crazy Spore, leaving a gully several tens of centimeters deep on the ground. Crazy Spore's eyes opened wider. He couldn't even be knocked away. Is this guy still a human? Realizing that the comer was not kind, Crazy Spore had to use all his strength. Kiritani Sento supported the roller coaster weighing more than 10 tons with just a knife. He knew he couldn't retreat anymore, because behind him was his fainted teammate. You idiot, don't underestimate me. Kiritani Sento's aura increased again, and after taking a few steps back, his heels just stopped beside the head of the swordsman wearing a lion doll. Crazy Spore showed a smile of victory, and his mouth opened wider. Don't forget, there is still one person, ha ha ha. Die. Die. Kill him. As soon as Crazy Spore finished speaking, Coco Shinobu's body moved by itself, and she walked towards Kiritani Sento step by step. Chapter 52. However, the mad spore was not panicked at all, and the red control spores were 10 times stronger than ordinary ones. Coco Shinobu struggled hard, but every time she resisted, she felt a piercing pain in her neck. If it was just pain, she wouldn't care, but her body was completely out of control, and she didn't want to hurt Kiritani Sento. Seeing Coco Shinobu crying, Kiritani Sento was completely angry, and people would stimulate their body's potential when they were angry. Flames spewed out from the black blade, and the raging fire quickly covered the entire roller coaster head. Blood vessels were like winding little snakes, quickly crawling all over Kiritani Sento's body. You bastard, old man, Shinobu is crying, damn it. Purgatory. Kiritani Sento used all his strength, and the entire roller coaster flew out directly, and the white bones were exposed at the same time. The spine of the spore was just behind the front of the train. Kiritani Sento stomped the ground hard, and a small pit was stepped on the ground. He rushed towards the evil spirit like a bullet. Kiritani Sento didn't want to scold this old man anymore. He was integrated with the means of transportation. Look at his nightmare, that's a whole train. The first type of Shiranui was swung out, and the sound of the knife whistled. The spore widened his eyes and trembled all over. The wolf soul seemed to be trembling, which was the fear of death. At this critical moment, the spore launched his strongest blood demon art to seal the big spore. In an instant, a big red mushroom jumped out of its mouth, accompanied by a huge suction force. Kiritani Sento, who was closest to him, was directly sucked in, and Coco Shinobu was also sucked in. Seeing the two people disappear, Crazy Spore instantly relaxed and said to himself, I'm scared to death. My stomach is the hardest part of my body. Wait for death and see how I digest you. After swallowing Kiritani and Sento, Crazy Spore burped. He really couldn't eat anymore and had to digest it first. Kiritani Sento immediately helped Coco Shinobu. He only remembered that he came to this unknown place when his eyes went black. The red wall was like a big pot, and black liquid kept oozing out. Suddenly a low voice sounded. It was Crazy Spore. Boy, stay in my stomach well. It won't be long before you become nothing but dregs. Ha ha ha. Is the pillar just like this? The mocking voice of Crazy Spore echoed throughout the stomach. Kiritani Sento looked around with disgust, feeling sick. He took a deep breath and swung a knife. Then Crazy Spore's entire stomach surged like a wave, and Kiritani Sento's sword skills were decomposed. Kiritani Sento could tell at a glance that this guy's stomach seemed to be using softness to overcome hardness. There was no way to make a miracle with great force, unless the explosion of the breath of fire and the softness of the breath of water could be released at the same time. Boy, Don't waste your energy, my stomach is comparable to that of an upper-rank demon. Oh! By the way, there is another gift for you. Attack! Crazy Spore ordered Koko Shinobu, but she did not swing her knife at Kiritani Sento, but pierced the balloon on her shoulder. Bang! The balloon exploded, and the colorful fireworks fell like snow, and Koko Shinobu's eyes lost their luster. Koko Shinobu used the last bit of strength to reach out to Kiritani Sento, her face full of self-blame. Sorry, I hurt you, I won't do it this time. 2 lines of tears flowed down Koko Shinobu's cheeks. Sure enough, she was a burden. Kiritani Sento hurriedly caught Koko Shinobu, but Koko Shinobu closed her eyes. His heart suddenly cooled down. He was so angry that he could not be more angry. Without saying anything, he used the healing technique, but strangely, Koko Shinobu did not have any external or internal injuries. Her body was healthy. Kiritani Sento put his finger on Koko Shinobu's philtrum and felt her steady breathing. He was relieved that she was still alive. Outside the stomach space, the roller coaster stopped in its original position. A lump of red meat began to wriggle from the front of the car little by little. After a while, the meat turned into a human shape. The earthy brown skin of the mad spore was covered with white dots. There was a large yellow mushroom on the left shoulder and a large red mushroom on the right shoulder. The yellow one was the control spore balloon, and the red one was the forced and illusion spore balloon. Once the red balloon was punctured, the most feared memory in the heart of the parasite would be awakened. Crazy Spore moved his body, and the careful spores emerged from the yellow mushroom. A breeze blew, and the spores flew into the depths of the amusement park. A few minutes later, Crazy Spore showed a wicked smile at the corner of his mouth. He snapped his fingers gently and whispered, "My main dishes, come out." Soon, the sound of clogs rubbing against the ground came from a distance, and a child appeared in the sight of Crazy Spore. Then the second, the third. The children were like Calabash brothers saving their grandfather, one after another. They were the children who disappeared from the playground. Fear, despair, fear. Negative emotions enveloped every child. In their dreams, they were facing the things they feared the most, and fear was always there. But every negative emotion was the perfect seasoning for Crazy Spore. Every emotion was a sauce: ketchup, black pepper sauce, salad sauce, and its saliva was about to flow out. Crazy Spore originally planned to gather 25 for tomorrow night, but who would have thought that the Demon Slayer Corps had sent the pillars? If it weren't for his stomach comparable to that of the upper strings and a perfect plan for the Yin people, the demons would have been gone long ago. What a pity, after all, I am better. Crazy Spore lamented about his life. Crazy Spore did not plan to look for the last child, anyway. He had already eaten 2 swordsmen, and there were still 15 swordsmen waiting to be eaten. Too many, he could not eat them all. Ha ha ha. As expected of me, I will become an upper string, get more blood from adults, and reach the peak of my life. Crazy Spore's proud smile echoed in the empty playground, as if it was the only winner. But the next second, Crazy Spore began to scratch its face frantically, and it suddenly cried when it was still laughing in the last second. Woo! Damn ghost hunters, I can't get enough 25, it's so uncomfortable. The shrill cry covered the rampant whisper, and the pain of the obsessive-compulsive patient was reflected vividly in it. Unable to eat 25 children, Crazy Spore was going crazy. But maybe the next pillar will arrive tomorrow, and it has no time left. If it wants to survive, it can't stay in one place for too long. Suddenly, the stomach of the mad spore sank, and it covered its stomach with a painful look. Ah, it hurts. It hurts so much. Chapter 53. Kiritani Sento exhaled a breath of foul air. This guy is really not bullshitting. Even Fulongshan can't cut him. Kiritani Sento sheathed his sword and thought about how to use the breath of water and the breath of flame at the same time. Throughout the ages, no one has been able to use 2 breathing methods at the same time. After all, the breathing rhythms between breathing methods are different, and just switching breathing methods will bring pain like exploding lungs. No. Don't, Dad, don't leave me. Koko Shinobu suddenly sat up, trembling all over, and sadness spread like a plague. Koko Shinobu was like a lonely puppy, with heavy rain pouring down, but she had no one to rely on. Tisk. Damn guy, I'll chop you into 8 pieces when I get out. Kiritani Sento has never hated anything so much. Mom, don't die. The next second, Coco Shinobu burst into tears. Helplessness and despair enveloped this poor girl. Kiritani Sento walked quickly to Coco Shinobu, tears in his eyes, his heart aching. In this world, a tear from a girl who loves her is the most heartbreaking. The boy gently held the girl in his arms. He wanted to share the burden for the girl, even if it was just a little bit. Kiritani Sento lowered his eyebrows, his silver medium-length hair covered Coco Shinobu's eyes, and said softly, "Don't be afraid, I'm here. Always here. Don't leave me, woo woo woo." Coco Shinobu's body was still trembling, and Kiritani Sento was like an umbrella blocking the storm. "I won't leave, never." Kiritani Sento's eyes were like a spring, pure as a newborn baby, with only the person in his arms in his eyes. "Wake up, Shinobu." The heavy rain rushed down, dripping ruthlessly on everyone. Next to the dilapidated wooden house, a couple was protecting their 2 daughters behind them. The man's hair was purple, and one of his eyes could no longer be opened. His face was firm. For his wife and daughter, what was there to fear about death? "Wife, take the daughters and run, the farther the better." The woman had already burst into tears, but she knew that if she didn't leave, the monster in front of her would kill them all. She could go to accompany her husband, but what about Shinobu and Kane? The woman helplessly picked up her 2 daughters, and the man rushed towards the evil ghost in front of him with a kitchen knife. Shinobu, the childhood butterfly, had a reluctant look on her tender face. She didn't seem to know what would happen. "Dad, don't you want me and my sister?" The man suppressed his tears and replied with a smile, "How is it possible? Dad will be here soon, Shinobu will go first." The evil ghost didn't even dodge and let the man stab the knife into his heart. It spit with disdain, and then pierced the other's heart as well. "Ridiculous human, you are all going to die." The man didn't have time to be surprised. As a doctor, he was very familiar with the structure of the human body, but he didn't expect that this monster would not die even after piercing the heart. The man fell down, and he hugged the evil ghost's calf with his remaining strength. The raindrops passed through the hole in his chest, taking away a piece of blood. The originally pure raindrops had already turned red. The man shouted to his wife, "Go, go." With red eyes, Shinobu Coco stabbed the evil ghost with a knife. There was nothing in front of her, only the intangible memory. Clang! The sun wheel sword fell to the ground, and Shinobu Coco knelt down in despair. "Sure enough, I still can't do anything. Dad, Mom, Shinobu misses you so much. Who can help me? Why? Why?" At this moment, Shinobu Coco perfectly interpreted what despair is, watching her parents die in front of her again and again. On that rainy night a few years ago, the heavy rain took away everything from her. Even now, what happened that night is like a thorn that cannot be pulled out, firmly inserted in her heart. The joyful life at the headquarters suppressed the sadness, but the sadness was still there. She had never walked out of the shadow, and she always hated all the ghosts. "Kaname, I'll leave Shinobu to you, run." The mother's voice made Shinobu Coco look up again. The woman gently touched the heads of her 2 daughters and hid them. Childhood Shinobu Coco stretched out her trembling little hands. She didn't want to lose her mother again. "Mom." Shinobu Coco was anxious and scared, but she was helpless and could only cry. The woman looked at her daughters reluctantly for the last time, then covered the last piece of wood, and she ran hard in the opposite direction. Shinobu Coco watched the evil ghost and her mother disappear in the darkness. She squatted down and buried her head in her arms, trying to forget everything. "Dad. Mom. They." Cold raindrops kept eroding Shinobu Coco's heart, and she was on the verge of collapse. She didn't know how many times she had watched her parents die in front of her. The long-dead memories came back to life and entered an infinite cycle of pain. The illusion of the mad spores was to play the most painful memories of people countless times to destroy the hearts of others. However, how many people can witness their parents die in front of them, not to mention that the number of times is 50? No. I don't want to watch it anymore. Someone save me. Don't leave me. The lights in Shinobu Coco's heart went out one by one, and in a blink of an eye, the surroundings became pitch black, with only the sound of dripping rain and the helpless cry of her childhood self. "Don't be afraid, I'm here. Always here. I won't leave, never." In a trance, a beam of light shone into the dark space, and a picture flashed through Shinobu Coco's mind. It was a little boy with silver hair and scars on his face. His eyes were like rubies, flashing and very beautiful. A burst of silver light flashed, and his wound healed. Then, the boy took out a red thing, which he had never seen before. It's not good to have a scratch on your face. If you encounter anything, please live with a smile, your family must want the same," said the boy. He looked at himself intently, with surprise in his eyes but more joy, as if he had found a beloved thing that had been lost for a long time. The boy's smile was as sweet as a candied haws, just like the snacks that his father bought for him every day. The boy's smile was also like sunshine, warm, and more like a spring breeze, gentle everywhere. Obviously everyone is the same, maybe they have lost their families, why should he comfort himself? Rabbit. Yes, his name is Kiritani Battle Rabbit, a gentle boy, and the first peer he met. In addition to her parents and sister, Shinobu Koko found her family for the first time. The 51st cycle began, the same rainy night and the same scene. Chapter 54. Shinobu Koko wiped her tears and held the sun blade tightly. She caught up with the demon just before it pierced her father's heart. Insect-breathing butterfly dance teasing. The sharp spikes pierced through the demon's body, and the environment and space broke like glass, and the fragile Shinobu Koko was also shattered. Tick. Tick. The sound of rain gradually faded away, and in a trance, Shinobu Koko found that her parents were smiling at her. "Shinobu, don't cry, live bravely." Shinobu Koko suddenly opened her eyes and shouted, "Dad, Mom." When she came to her senses, she found that the boy was protecting her under his body, and there was a sizzling corrosion sound behind him. Kiritani Sento's tightly furrowed brows relaxed, his red eyes were full of Koko Shinobu, and he said softly, "Shinobu, welcome back." Koko Shinobu looked at Kiritani Sento's red left shoulder, her eyes moistened instantly, but she didn't want to say anything discouraging, so she smiled and replied. "Yet. I'm back." Kiritani Sento rubbed Koko Shinobu's little head like an older brother, and then stretched his hand to Koko Shinobu's waist. Koko Shinobu was very confused, could this pervert want to do something, but Kiritani Sento just pulled out the sword from her waist. Koko Shinobu, who realized that she had thought wrong, was ashamed, and Kiritani Sento was even more confused. Why did she blush when holding a knife? Kiritani Sento asked worriedly, "Could it be that this ghost's stomach has poisonous gas? Shinobu, you should be careful." Koko Shinobu immediately turned from shy to surprised, she completely forgot that she was in the ghost's stomach. "Don't worry, just watch me. Luckily you woke up, otherwise I wouldn't dare to leave you alone, the stomach acid is too scary." While speaking, Kiritani Sento drew out the saber from his waist, and at this moment he had two swords. Kiritani Sento took a deep breath, but the flow of gas was a little subtle, and the gas entering the left and right lobes was completely different. Kiritani Sento has been studying how to perform two sword skills at the same time since he first learned two breathing methods. Sword skills and sword skills are like the yin and yang poles of Tai Chi. As long as you can maintain that balance, each half of the lung can bear a breathing method. In theory, it is completely possible to perform fusion sword skills, and today is the time to practice. This time, Kiritani Sento plans to use both water and fire breathing methods at the same time. Water breathing was taught to Kiritani Sento by Santo, and he didn't expect to use it so soon. Of the 5 basic breathing methods, Kiritani Sento has learned 3, all thanks to Crescent Moon Eye. The red and blue fighting spirits echoed each other. The blade of Kiritani Sento's Nikaran sword had turned red, while Koko Shinobu's had turned blue. 2 different air currents flowed into Kiritani Sento's lungs at the same time, and the exploding pain swept over him, and his breathing became heavy. Koko Shinobu couldn't believe her eyes. It was difficult for a person to learn a breathing method. If a person who created his own breathing method was a genius, then what Rabbit was doing now was beyond the cognition of normal people. Koko Shinobu gritted her teeth and kept her eyes on Kiritani Sento, fearing that something would happen to him. The speed at which stomach acid was left was obviously accelerated. It wouldn't take long for the stomach acid to flood the place where Kiritani Sento and Koko Shinobu were standing. They were in the highest part of the stomach space, but in the black stomach acid like a vast ocean, this place seemed so small. Kiritani Sento's breathing became heavier and heavier. The 2 breathing methods were like 2 tigers on a mountain, incompatible with each other. Sweat soaked Kiritani's uniform, and the black windbreaker was already full of small holes corroded by stomach acid. Kiritani tried his best to calm his heartbeat. His last name was Kiritani, and he couldn't embarrass Master Kiritani who played with 2 swords. At the critical moment, the Tai Chi that Kiritani had practiced for many years came into play. He opened his eyes a second before the stomach acid flooded the small platform. When I pulled out the second sword, it was to protect the one I loved. Kiritani suddenly remembered Master Kiritani's classic quote. You old man, have you heard of a move called Starburst Abandon Treatment / Give up treatment, you? Kiritani swung the two sun blades in his hands with all his strength, and two dragons, one red and one blue, surrounded the blades. He used the fusion sword technique for the first time. Breathing of the pupil, the first form, water and fire dragon dance. The water dragon and the fire dragon seemed to be roaring, and the stomach wall of the crazy spore spring shook violently. In the blink of an eye, the ripples covered the entire stomach. Koko Shinobu took the opportunity to take out 6 test tubes from her waist, each of which was filled with wisteria flower toxin. She threw all 6 of them with all her strength. The test tube perfectly hit the place where Kiritani Battle Rabbit attacked. Crazy Spore took physical and magic damage at the same time and successfully got a double buff. Outside the stomach space, Crazy Spore felt pain and immediately dropped the child in his hand. He rolled on the ground with his hands on his stomach, and his whole face was squeezed together. There was no movement for such a long time, and he thought that the damn pillar had died long ago. Black liquid kept flowing out of his mouth, and soon it was corroded beyond recognition. Only the stomach could withstand its strong stomach acid. Except for the stomach, it couldn't bear it. Crazy Spore covered his stomach with one hand and his mouth with the other hand. Because the heat generated by the corrosion wrapped it, the shrill screams resounded through the sky. Crazy Spore fluttered back and forth, like a fish out of water, as if it would suffocate in the next second. Crazy Spore, who found the problem, immediately vomited out his stomach. The mushroom-shaped stomach instantly enlarged, and 2 large holes appeared on the stomach wall at some point. Kiritani's joyful voice came out of the cave, woohoo! It feels so good to breathe fresh air. Kiritani jumped out holding Koko Shinobu, raised his knife and pointed at Crazy Spore, and sarcastically said, Tisk, tisk, tisk. Does it hurt? Tell me, what other tricks do you have? Use them all. Cough, cough, cough. As soon as he finished speaking, Kiritani coughed violently a few times. His lungs still hurt until now. It turned out that using 2 kinds of breathing at the same time was too much of a stretch. However, the benefits were great, and the stomach of that guy who thought he was comparable to the upper string was directly broken. Crazy Spore, who couldn't bear the pain, simply cut off the entire stomach. It would grow anyway, but the stomach acid needed to be accumulated again. Crazy Spore stubbornly retorted, that's it, garbage pillar. When he looked in front of him, he found that Kiritani and Koko Shinobu were gone, but immediately a voice came from behind him. Where are you looking? Go to hell, you idiot! Kiritani Sento and Koko Shinobu's Nichiren swords slashed into Crazy Spore's neck at the same time. Chapter 55. At the same time, the roller coaster rushed out of the parking point again, but the target of the roller coaster was the children in the illusion. Koko Shinobu and Kiritani Sento each picked up 2 children and just avoided the roller coaster's crush. Crazy Spore also took the opportunity to get into the roller coaster. The smiling Mickey Mouse turned into a weird smile again, and countless black tentacles emerged from the car. Except for the children held by the 2, the remaining 20 children were all swept away by the tentacles. Kiritani Sento looked at Crazy Spore with a gloomy face. This guy is so sinister, a complete old sinister. A dull sound came from the front of the roller coaster, and Crazy Spore said triumphantly, come on, cut me. If you don't want to kill people. Crazy Spore has now completely lost the idea of devouring these children. If he wants to survive, he must use these children as shields. Bang, bang, bang. The balloons suspended on the children's shoulders burst one after another, and colorful fireworks covered Crazy Spore's whole body like a layer of armor. This time it took the initiative to remove the illusion of the red balloon. In an instant, the whole playground was covered with crying sounds one after another, mixed with Crazy Spore's crazy laughter. Mom, I want to find my mom. Ah! Who will save me? The children who were not very experienced in the world had never seen such a terrifying scene, and some were even scared to pee. Kiritani immediately shouted, everyone look at me. This is the filming site of Kamen Rider's battle against the roller coaster monster. I hope all the children can cooperate. As soon as Kiritani finished speaking, the silver crescent moon was engraved in the eyes of every child, and the scene in front of them changed. In the illusion, each of them fought against the roller coaster monster with imaginary weapons. The original overwhelming crying had long been replaced by laughter. However, applying illusions to 24 people at the same time had already exceeded the limit that Kiraitani's body could bear. In the laughter, 2 lines of blood and tears flowed from Kiraitani's pupils. Koko Shinobu trembled in her heart. She was so distressed. She had already endured too much stomach acid to save her own rabbit, and now she was forcibly using illusions on more than 20 people. Koko Shinobu remembered that illusions were his most physically demanding ability, and he would not use them unless it was absolutely necessary. Rabbit! You should remove the illusion and deal with that guy first. Shinobu Koko supported the pale-faced Kiritani Sento and gently wiped the blood off his face with a handkerchief. Sento Koko responded with a face as hard as steel, the dream of childhood is the most fragile thing. Even if you leave it alone, it will break by itself one day. So, someone must protect it. It's good enough if we just know about such a terrifying thing. I'm fine. He. Sento Koko used his thumb to wipe away the tears from the corners of Shinobu Koko's eyes handsomely, and rushed towards Crazy Spore with a knife. Shinobu Koko was stunned. The image of Sento Koko had reached the highest level in her heart, and no one could replace it. Yes, the dream of adolescence is like a flower scroll that never fades. Sento Koko just wants to keep those colorful and brilliant moments. Shinobu Koko also raised her knife and shouted with a smile. Today's goal is to protect the children. Crazy Spore was so surprised by this pie in the sky. He thought that waking up these little guys would intimidate these 2 guys, but who would have thought that he would directly weaken the opponent's main combat power? Mad money, really a big money. Crazy Spore, who got the advantage and still acted cute, did not forget to add insult to injury and directly taunted, "Are you stupid? Do you think you can still hurt me in your current state? I am the lower string one, ha ha ha. Bear my anger." As soon as Crazy Spore finished talking nonsense, 2 tentacles were cut off by Kiritani Sento. Kiritani Sento grabbed and threw, and the 2 laughing children landed safely, and they even waved their hands. Kohiko Shinobu used the Dragonfly Dance Compound Eye Hexagon, and a perfect 6-hit combo pierced into Crazy Spore's steel body. A large amount of toxins penetrated into the opponent's body, and the next step was to wait. Crazy Spore swung its tail over the mountain, and the more than 10-meter-long roller coaster was about to give Kiritani Sento a big slap in the face. Although Kiritani Sento used Shenjun Waning to defend himself, he was still blown away. Cough cough cough. Kiritani Sento spat out a mouthful of blood. It was the first time he was attacked in the lower-ranked demon. Dozens of black tentacles swarmed in, and each one was enough to penetrate Kiritani Sento's body. It was the blood demon Art Blackthorn. Protect the children. You underestimate me too much, die. Ha ha, ha, ha. Ugh. The black spike stopped in front of Kiritani Sento's eyes. If he moved a little, Kiritani Sento's eyes would be useless. Crazy Spore began to spit blood. Although he was trying his best to decompose the toxin, he still murmured about Koko Shinobu's talent. The toxin injected into his body just now was the strongest version at present, specifically targeting the ability of ghosts to decompose toxins. The black blood seemed to be free, and the black tentacles surrounding the roller coaster were like weeds sprayed with paraquat, withering and breaking. The remaining 18 children fell one after another, and Koko Shinobu wandered around the roller coaster, throwing the children one by one to a safe area. Crazy Spore's battle damage level was much higher than that of Kiritani Sento, after all, he had a double poison buff. Kiritani Sento breathed a sigh of relief. He thought he was going to go blind at that moment. Thanks to Shinobu's poison, it was just in time. Kiritani Sento gave Shinobu Koko a thumbs up and said with a smile, "Shinobu, well done." Shinobu Koko smiled sweetly, just like a ray of warm sunshine in the cold winter. "Shinobu, I leave it to you." Kiritani Sento used his last strength to throw out his sunwheel blade. Shinobu Koko stepped over the front of the roller coaster and caught the sunwheel blade. Shinobu Koko took a deep breath and gathered all her strength into her fingertips. Because of Tai Chi, her strength increased a lot. Because of the corrosion of the toxin, the entire spine of the mad spore was exposed to the air. This is its real neck. The black sunwheel blade perfectly blended into the night. Shinobu Koko was like a dancing butterfly, holding the knife and drawing a perfect arc in the air. Ding! The crisp sound broke the sky, and the sun blade got stuck in the gap between the spines. The crazy spore, who was already too weak to move, laughed out loud, "Ha ha ha, that's it, that's it. I thought it was so powerful." Chapter 56. But this knife not only cut off the neck of the evil ghost, but also the past of Shinobu Koko, the fragile her. Shinobu Koko's veins bulged, but her strength was still her biggest shortcoming. Crazy Spore naturally saw everything in Shinobu Koko's environment, and even if she died, she had to defeat the swordsman's heart. Death or not was no longer a big deal for Crazy Spore, it had already regarded the two as the most disgusting people. Crazy Spore's crazy voice sounded, and it kept repeating the moment when Shinobu Koko's parents died. "Ha ha ha. You are a waste, without that little ghost, you are nothing. Your parents' death is really not worth it. Saved a waste." Shinobu Koko was startled, her hands began to shake unconsciously, and she kept refuting Crazy Spore's words. "No, no. I'm not, you're talking nonsense." Kiritani Sento saw it all and was furious. This guy deserved to die. He stood up tremblingly, his heavy breathing brought out bright red blood. He gritted his teeth and rushed to Shinobu Koko. He stood behind Shinobu Koko, and the two of them held hands. Kiritani Sento used his last bit of strength to hold Shinobu Koko's hand and cut it down. Kiritani Sento loudly refuted Kuang Spore, "You damn guy, don't fart there. Shinobu is very strong now." The two of them moved in sync, and with a slight click, Kuang Spore's spine broke. Kuang Spore looked incredulous. Why could this guy still move? How is it possible? How is it possible? Kiritani Sento and Shinobu Koko collapsed at the same time, and the whole roller coaster began to disintegrate. Lower string 1, Kuang Spore, dead. Shinobu Koko couldn't hold it back any longer. She had only cried once since her parents died. No matter how hard the training was, she had never complained about the hardship or tiredness. But at this moment, she couldn't hold it back any longer. Maybe she didn't need to pretend to be so strong in front of Kiritani Sento. Shinobu Koko threw herself into Kiritani Sento's arms and cried loudly. All the resentment and regret in her heart disappeared with her tears. Like a mother coaxing a child to sleep, Kiritani Sento gently patted Shinobu Koko's back. He comforted her softly, "It's okay, everything is over. From today on, Shinobu will be a different Shinobu." Shinobu Koko's arms tightened, and her head sunk deeper and deeper, fearing that Kiritani Sento would leave. Under the empty starry sky, the girl cried without reservation, and the boy kept comforting each other. After an unknown amount of time, the mad spores had completely turned into ashes. Shinobu Koko raised her head and she returned to her old self. She was relieved, because she had caused too much trouble to Rabbit because of herself, and her parents definitely didn't want this. Shinobu Koko lowered her head again and said with guilt, "Rabbit, I'm sorry, it's all my fault." Toriya Sento gently lifted Shinobu Koko's chin and said seriously, "Shinobu." Mr. Shinobu Koko was stunned for a moment, because it was almost impossible to see Rabbit so serious. "I'm listening. Don't be afraid, don't feel guilty, in my heart, you are in front of my life." Shinobu Koko didn't say anything, but her smile had answered everything. Yes, she was special to Rabbit, and Rabbit was even more special to her. When she found that Shinobu Koko closed her eyes, Kiritani Sento understood what Sento meant. As the saying goes, "Don't talk nonsense, kiss me." Snap! 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 When Kiritani Sento was about to take a step further, thunderous applause rang out in the silent night sky. At the same time, loud praises came, "Long live Master Hitomi-sama! Master Hitomi-sama is so awesome!" The 15 swordsmen who had fainted all woke up. Master Hitomi-sama's name was imprinted in everyone's mind, and his appearance was very iconic. The atmosphere that had been created disappeared in an instant, and Shinobu Koko hurriedly distanced herself from Sento Kiritani. "Oh my god!" Sento Kiritani turned his head and glared at everyone. Damn, it was all in vain. However, Sento Kiritani immediately assigned tasks to everyone, and there was still a group of children to deal with. Since it was to protect the children's childhood, of course, the whole set was done to the end, but fortunately there were dolls here, just right. Shinobu Koko helped Sento Kiritani up, called all the swordsmen over, and he spoke out his inner thoughts. Everyone gave thumbs up. Although this method could not completely eliminate the shadows in the children's hearts, it could at least heal them. All the swordsmen put on their doll costumes and stood by Sento Kiritani and the two of them. Then they stood in a row. Kiritani Battle Rabbit snapped his fingers, and the illusion was lifted. He had broken through the limit here today. Shinobu Koko could clearly feel that Kiritani Battle Rabbit was trembling all over. If he hadn't been supported by her, he would have definitely fallen. As the illusion was lifted, the children woke up one after another. They looked around curiously. Everything that happened just now was like a dream, too real. However, all the children experienced the same ending. They defeated the roller coaster monster under the leadership of Mr. Fox. A little boy suddenly shouted, "Look, it's Mr. Fox and Sister Butterfly, and the doll soldiers. Wow! Really? So awesome!" Kiritani Battle Rabbit and Shinobu Koko also wore masks, after all, their appearance could not be exposed. Kiritani Sento took a deep breath and said confidently, "Thanks to the efforts of all the little heroes, the roller coaster monster has been destroyed. Mr. Fox sincerely thanks each of you here. Everything that happened today is a secret between us. Everyone, promise me not to tell anyone, okay? Mr. Fox is the best. We can defeat all monsters. Yes, 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 I'm not afraid at all." The children seemed to have got their favorite toys, and they happily shared how powerful each other's weapons were. Kiritani Sento raised his voice again, and his voice overwhelmed all the children. "Everyone, thank you for your company, we will meet again if we are lucky." Kiritani Sento, Koko Shinobu and 15 swordsmen in doll costumes bowed together. The curtain of Mr. Fox and the roller coaster monster was removed, and the whole play ended. "Everyone, the doll soldiers will take you home next, goodbye." As soon as Kiritani Sento finished speaking, 15 swordsmen came to the children one after another. "Little heroes, please follow us and be safe. Mr. Fox, Sister Butterfly, goodbye. Thank you, this game is fun." The originally dark and silent playground was filled with innocent children's voices. They didn't even doubt the truth of the story because it was a fairy tale. "Goodbye. Goodbye." Kiritani Sento and Koko Shinobu waved goodbye to everyone. Chapter 57. Kiritani Sento said weakly, "Shinobu, I'll sleep for a while, just for a while." As soon as the voice fell, Kiritani Sento fainted. A person with healing skills was the most seriously injured. Shinobu Koko was a little scared. She was afraid that Rabbit would suddenly leave her. The order in his mind might not be right. If he ranked first, the lives of others would still be ranked before him. Risking his life for others, perhaps this is Rabbit's greatest charm. Shinobu Koko knelt on the ground so that Kiritani Sento could rest his head on her thighs. She combed Kiritani Sento's hair, then took out a handkerchief and gently wiped his cheek. "Rabbit, do you know? I like you very, very much." The sky was pale, and the first ray of sunlight in the morning enveloped Shinobu Koko and the two. Kiritani Sento's breathing was steady, and he was obviously exhausted. Suddenly, a team of members wearing the uniforms of the Demon Slayer Corps and white scarves came in. The Inferno, the post-processing team of the Demon Slayer Corps, is mostly composed of members who have no swordsmanship talent. They are responsible for the finishing work after the Demon Slayer Corps fights with demons. Although they cannot fight demons on the front line, they are also an indispensable part of the Demon Slayer Corps, just like an ant nest cannot do without worker ants. In the team of more than a dozen people, a petite girl rushed out first. Shinobu Koko rubbed her eyes to make sure she was not mistaken. "Kaoru. Why are you here?" Kaoru Kiritani knelt directly in front of her brother, performing a healing spell while explaining, "Everyone is always fighting on the front line, I can't drag them down. So I applied to follow the members of Inferno to perform the mission together. If we arrive at the battlefield early, we may be able to save more comrades." After a while, Kaoru Kiritani was already sweating profusely, but she felt it was worth it because her brother's injuries were healed. The efficiency of the members of the Hidden Blade was so high that they finished the scene in less than half an hour. Kiritani Sento was also sent to the nearest Fuji house as soon as possible. Fuji House is a family that has received help from the Demon Slayer Corps, so the family will provide free help to the members of the Demon Slayer Corps, including food, clothing, housing, transportation, and healing, etc. Their family crests often have wisteria flowers printed on them. As for the case of the missing child, the Yubayashiki family will handle it perfectly. Being able to support the Demon Slayer Corps for 1,000 years at the same time, the financial resources of the Yubayashiki family can be said to be unfathomable, otherwise there is no way to handle the incidents related to demons. This is also the most reassuring place for every swordsman of the Demon Slayer Corps. Just let go and fight, the Lord will handle everything. The reason why Kiritani Sento asked the swordsman to send the child to the police station was to let the boss handle the matter better. Anyway, her purpose has been achieved. More than 20 days have passed in the blink of an eye. Fuji House in Asakusa. Kiritani Sento sat bored under the pavilion reading the newspaper. He had not stepped out of Fuji House for a month. Even this mission report was submitted by Shinobu after he returned. Yabayashiki Yoya praised Kiritani Sento highly after hearing what he did. But at the same time, he also ordered him to recuperate for a month, because his sword skills were too extraordinary, and he could no longer be described as a genius. Yabayashiki Yoya had a hunch that Kiritani Sento would be the strongest pillar in the Demon Slayer Corps, and Gyume Hayashima also agreed. A headline in the newspaper caught Kiritani Sento's attention, and he couldn't help laughing. The boss really wrote it out. The mysterious Mr. Fox solved the case of the disappearance of 24 children in Asakusa, and the suspect was shot dead on the spot. The next article in the case was a fairy tale specifically for children, named Mr. Fox and Sister Butterfly. Kiritani Sento couldn't help but sigh. It must cost a lot of money to buy a special advertising space. The boss is really... After reading the newspaper, Kiritani Sento sneaked into the room, put on his team uniform, took his knife, and tiptoed towards the back door of Fuji's house. Because of the amusement park's recklessness, Kiritani Sento was strongly condemned by Kiritani Kaoru and had to rest for a few more days. But how could Kiritani Sento not know about his own body? Healing skills are not to be underestimated, and 10 days of rest is enough. He still has a lot of things to do, such as finding Pig, finding Tanjiro's home, and going to Momoyama to learn thunder breathing. After a long period of observation, Kiritani Sento discovered this hidden back door, so the rabbit's 138th escape plan this month was launched. Kiritani Sento looked left and right, and after confirming that there was no one, he used the least effort. He pushed open the back door. What came into view was that handsome expressionless face. Jiyu suddenly laughed, and his fake smile almost gave Kiritani Sento a heart attack. Kiritani Sento took a step back and complained, "Jiyu, you are going to scare people to death in broad daylight." Tomioka Jiyu completely ignored Kiritani Sento, raised his arm seriously, and blocked the door tightly. "The Lord said you have to stay here for a month, not even a day less." Kiritani Sento was prepared. He offered radish salmon, which was Jiyu's favorite food. "Jiyu, let me out. Look, I've recovered so well." Sure enough, when the radish salmon came out, Tomioka Jiyu's eyes shifted, but Sun's instructions suddenly appeared, and he directly served the radish salmon. Tomioka Jiyu shook his head and said seriously, "Kaoru said you must rest well." Kiritani Sento shook his head and said in a persuasive way, "Jiyu, think about it. Who helped you get out of the shadow of the past?" "It was you." Tomioka Jiyu answered without hesitation. "Then should you help me, good brother?" Kiritani Sento hugged Tomioka Jiyu with a smile and pushed the salmon to his nose. Tomioka Jiyu immediately pushed Kiritani Sento away, as if to say, "Please keep your distance from me." Kaoru said, "Rabbit, you must rest for a month, not even a day less." I listened to Kaoru. Kiritani Sento was petrified on the spot, and Tomioka Jiyu naturally took the salmon. Just when Kiritani was thinking about how to fool Dandan Jiyu, another figure appeared on the wall. He held a hemp rope in his hand and looked at Kiritani Sento with a smirk. Kiritani Sento suddenly had a bad feeling, and his back felt cold. What are you going to do?" The boy rubbed his head, shook the hemp rope in his hand, and slowly replied, "I was passing by and caught the lecherous rabbit who was about to escape." "Yeah. That's it. Rabbit, don't try to run away." Chapter 58. Kiritani Sento looked at Iguro Obanai in panic and said slowly, "Hey, don't come over here." Iguro Obanai rolled his eyes at Kiritani Sento and then said to Tomioka Jiyu, "Hey. Dead face paralysis, hold him down." Iguro Obanai has always disliked Tomioka Jiyu, but when it comes to rabbits, the two of them are surprisingly on the same side. After a series of punches, Kiritani Sento was tied up tightly. No matter how he cursed, Iguro Obanai ignored him. Tomioka Jiyu grabbed one end of the rope and carried Kiritani Sento back to the house. Before the two disappeared around the corner, Obanai didn't forget to mock him. "You rookie, you've fallen like this after beating a lower-ranked demon, tisk." Iguro Obanai kept his fame and fortune to himself and left Fuji's house directly, leaving only a bag of dorayaki on the table in front of Kiritani Sento. Time flies like a white horse, and a year has quietly passed through his fingers. During this period, Kiritani Sento only carried out tasks related to the 12 demon moons. Because he has a more important task, which is to find the upper-rank demons who rarely show up. Kiritani Sento specially compiled a set of information about the upper-rank demons, but his memory is very vague, and he only remembers some general things. As for others asking him why he knows, he can only be ambiguous and fooled. After all, Kiritani Sento can't say that he came from a time travel. Fortunately, his crescent pupil can release illusions, and Kiritani Sento explained that it was information extracted from other demons using illusions. No matter how you think about it, this reason is perfect. Yabayashiki Yoya and the other pillars believed it, and after some discussion, they solemnly established the Upper Moon Annihilation Plan. The Demon Slayer Corps had been passive for hundreds of years, and this plan was also the first time that the Demon Slayer Corps took the initiative to attack. In the situation where the enemy was in the dark and we were in the light, Kiritani Sento believed that only by killing an upper moon could Muzan Kibutsuji appear. Among the 6 upper moons, Doma and Daki are the easiest to find, but Doma is a very annoying guy. It is the leader of the Eternal Paradise cult, who has close contact with humans. As long as a follower is found, the problem will be solved. Of course, hating Doma cannot be regarded as a reason. Kiritani Sento knew that Kane would die at the hands of Doma. Instead of waiting passively, it is better to take the initiative, otherwise who knows when Kane will meet Doma. After considering many factors, Kiritani Sento chose Doma instead of Daki. As the saying goes, the upper moon is iron, and the lower moon is changing. The upper string has not changed for hundreds of years, and the lower string may change too in a year. The cold wind rustled, like a knife through the maple forest. The sound of brisk footsteps echoed in the forest, one with black hair, the other with silver hair. 2 young men moved quickly in the forest. One of them was Fuzugawa Sane, and the other was his close friend, Makino Kyujika. Makino Kyujika wore a black team uniform, and his bright black hair was similar to that of Fuzugawa Sane, a small hedgehog head. Makino Kyujika was someone Fuzugawa Sane met during an accidental ghost hunting. He taught Fuzugawa Sane about ghosts and introduced him to the Demon Slayer Corps. Even Fuzugawa Sane learned the breath of wind from Makino Kyujika. It can be said that Makino Kyujika's position in Fuzugawa Sane's heart is no less than that of Kiritani Sento, who he regarded as a benefactor. Kuang-ye Makino stopped, his nerves tensed up. Shimai, we're here. Fuzugawa Shimai followed his friend's gaze and saw a large villa located in the maple forest. The villa exuded a strange fragrance. However, in such a magnificent house, there lived an evil ghost, and the mission target of Fuzugawa Shimai and the others was it. Fuzugawa Shimai pulled out the sun wheel sword and kicked the door open. He had an extraordinary hatred for ghosts and must kill them. Kuang-ye Makino shook his head helplessly. Shimai was still so impulsive that he rushed to the front when he met a ghost. Kuang-ye Makino, who was concerned about his friend's safety, followed him. Strangely, there was no one in the huge yard. Kuang-ye Makino became nervous instantly. He looked around vigilantly. The whole yard seemed to be made of maple trees, and the strange fragrance was lingering, making people want to smell it for a while. No. Masahiro-san immediately used the 5th form of breathing of wind, cold autumn mountain wind. Where the sword skill was dancing, a huge vortex of wind formed, and the flowing wind blew away the strange fragrance. The originally magnificent villa suddenly became dilapidated, and moss covered the whole house. He he he. A woman's feminine laughter came from all directions of the dilapidated house. Welcome to my house. I am Guhuo Bird, the current lower string one. As soon as Guhuo Bird finished speaking, Kyujiro Quangjin's heart jumped into his throat, lower string. This time he really won the prize. Kyujiro Quangjin took a deep breath, turned around and swung his sword immediately. The 9th form, Wiichuo Tiantai wind was activated, and countless whirling wind blades were emitted. He did not hesitate at all and directly used the final form of breathing of wind, but Kyujiro Quangjin's judgment was not wrong. Guhuo Bird was behind him. Guhuo Bird was wearing a purple kimono with a kind smile on her face. There was a gap between the kimonos, revealing a touch of spring light, and her eyes were as red as blood. Although she was a ghost, there was no doubt that she was a peerless beauty. Guhuo Bird stood there motionless, allowing the violent wind blades to hit her, but she didn't care at all. Ah. It's so comfortable. I can't stand it. The corners of Kusino Quangjin's mouth kept twitching. This time, he not only met the lower string, but also met a pervert. The pale little hand of Guhuo Bird gently stroked the side of Kusino Quangjin's face, and the gentle voice made people numb. Little guy, it's very good. Sister likes it very much. As a reward, let me tell you where your little friend is. Guhuo Bird gently waved her hand, and purple clouds gathered in front of Kusino Quangjin. Soon a small opening opened, and Fuzugawa Shia was in that small space. You damn ghost, let Shia out quickly. Kono Quangjin swung the knife in his hand angrily, and Guhuo Bird raised her arms to block it. The wind blades passed through her pale arms, and she was immersed in it with a smile. This lunatic. Kono Quangjin didn't understand the other party's behavior and hated it. He just wanted to rescue Shimai as soon as possible. It was one of Guhuo Bird's blood demon arts, the different space, that trapped Fushigawara Shimai. This different space is located in her abdomen, and all her blood demon arts are based on incense. Guhuo Bird is the ghost of incense. Chapter 59. However, the breath of wind could just blow away the fragrance in the air. Next, he needed to rescue Shimi. After confirming the plan, the alien space immediately rushed up. The 9 breath of wind sword skills kept circulating, and Guhuo Niao's incense could not get close at all. Guhuo Niao always had a smile on her face, as if everything was under control. She didn't care about Kuang Ye Quangjin's attack at all. There was only one type of people that interested her, that is, those who were abused by their parents in childhood. She liked to capture people who had been abused by their parents, claiming to be their new mother, and then swallowed them into her stomach with a smile. The crisp sound of metal collision resounded throughout the house, and Guhuo Niao could even take the wind blade emitted by Kuang Ye Quangjin with just her hands. Every move was done with bare hands to catch the blade. Even if Kusino Masaki was able to hit him, it was intentional. Different space. Fuzukawa Shima looked at the space barrier, but all the wind blades were submerged in the endless smoke. The mist was unfeeling, but whenever Fuzukawa Shima tried to pass through the purple smoke, he would be blocked by the invisible barrier. Fuzukawa Shima remembered that he was engulfed by the purple smoke the moment he rushed into the villa, and then he came to this ghost place. The only thing he could be sure of was that this must be a blood demon technique. Damn it! Damn it! Let's fight head-on, damn ghost! Fuzukawa Shima became irritable, his eyes were bloodshot, a feature that only appeared when he was particularly excited. Suddenly, a gentle voice came from the smoke, "Become my child, let me save you." Poor man who was abused by his father. The voice of the Guhuo Bird is very similar to the siren in mythology. The sirens always use their songs to confuse passing sailors and let their ships run aground and be destroyed. Fushigawara Shia is the wooden boat that is swaying in the sea, but he is a powerful sailor. Fushigawara Shia cursed with disgust, "Don't disgust me, my disgust for you is not even 1/10,000th of that drunkard. Ghost! Damn it!" Fushigawara Shia slashed at the boundary wall of the alien space frantically, but this thing is harder than diamond. Guhuo Bird still did not give up, and kept telling Fushigawara Shia's tragic past. She knew she still had a chance, because in her illusion, she already knew Fushigawara Shia's past, which is why she wanted to separate the two. Special people should be treated specially. Outside the alien space. After constant probing, Kujira was basically sure where Shimai was imprisoned. Whenever the wind blade flew towards the devil's belly, she would subconsciously block and retreat. Kujira suddenly retreated several meters, creating an illusion of escape. Guhuo Bird didn't care about this. She only wanted Shimai of the Undead River. She didn't care whether the guy in front of her died or walked away. She just wanted to give those poor children a home and then eat them with a smile. Kujira seized this opportunity. The opponent looked down on him. This was wrong in a battle, even if you were much stronger than the opponent. Any weak creature would be unstoppable once it exploded. Kujira used the 8th form, the first fierce wind slash. He rushed forward with the force of the wind, so fast that Guhuo Bird opened his eyes wide. Interesting, don't you want to run? Kuno Quangjin slashed at Guhuo Niao's neck. Just before the blade fell, he turned around and slashed the emerald green blade towards Guhuo Niao's lower abdomen. By the time she reacted, it was too late. Guhuo Niao stabbed at Kuno Quangjin's heart like crazy. However, the powerful spiral wind blade rolled up by the 8-shaped form surrounded Kuno Quangjin's body, and Guhuo Niao's hands suddenly became bloody. The wind blade only bought a few seconds, but it was enough for Kuno Quangjin. The sun wheel sword had already cut into Guhuo Niao's lower abdomen. Purple incense gushed out like it was free, and the smile on Guo Niao's face froze. She punched out, and Kuno Kuang flew backwards. After smashing several walls in a row, it stopped. The originally dilapidated house was completely turned into a ruin, and Kuno Kuangjin became a piece of wood in it. But Guo Bird did not stop attacking. In just one breath, she rushed into the ruins and stepped down, causing the entire ground to sag. Wood chips flew like snow. If Kuang Ye had not dodged in time, he would have suffered more than just a few broken ribs. Guo Bird's veins popped up. If she looked like a gentle and virtuous woman just now, she looked like a humanoid Tyrannosaurus Rex now. Guo Bird roared in a somewhat crazy manner, "Little devil, get out of here! Eat you! Eat you! I'm going to cut you into pieces! Why do you want to destroy the bond between us? He is my new son!" Kuno Kuangjin hid in the pile of broken wood, not daring to breathe. He knew very well that if he fought now, he would definitely die. He was not afraid of death, but he didn't want Shimei to die with him. Unlike him, he had a younger brother. "Come out! Come out!" Boom boom boom. Every kick of Guo Bird was like a cannonball, and the ground around her kept shaking. In a flash, the wood fragments near Guo Bird turned into powder. Finding that Guo Bird had quieted down, Kuangjin endured the pain of broken bones and launched a surprise attack. Kuangjin ran at the fastest speed in his life. Even with every step he took, blood would flow out of his mouth. Soon the hurricane surrounded Guo Bird. He was the hurricane itself, with the power to crush everything. Hundreds of sharp wind blades flew from all directions, attacking Guo Bird in all directions without dead angles. Guo Bird used her body as a weapon, and each punch could break a wind blade. Her speed even exceeded Kuangjin's speed. In a trance, Guo Bird had already arrived in front of Kuangjin. She kicked at the opponent with a sideways kick, and the powerful force made the air sizzle. Kuangjin made a quick decision, and the 3-type Kinglan Fengshu swung out, and 3 huge wind blades several meters long turned from attack to defense. However, facing the Guo Bird's foot strength, the wind blades were as brittle as a piece of paper. All 3 wind blades were broken, and Kuangjin had to hold the sword in front of him, but he and the broken sword flew out together. The hot blood drew an arc in the night sky, and the scorching wild bird plowed a hole more than 10 meters long on the ground. When he reacted, the Guo Bird was already standing in front of him, and its bayonet-like legs could kick the head of the scorching wild bird in a minute. Die! The face of the Guo Bird was full of disgust. Chapter 60. The smoke and dust dissipated, and the furious Fushigawara Shia stood opposite the Guo Bird, and his eyes that wanted to kill a ghost could not be hidden. Kuangjin said with joy, "Shia, you are finally back." "Kuangjin, I'm sorry, I'm late." The Guo Bird held its chin with both hands, blinked its big eyes at Fushigawara Shia, and said with a little concern, "My son, let your mother hug you." Fushigawara frowned and spit at the Guo Bird, "Go away. Damn ghost." He took a deep breath and rushed straight to the Guo Bird with the help of the 8th type's charge. Unlike Kuangjin's attack, Fushigawara Shia was the real howling wind. The spiral wind blades tightly wrapped around Guo Niao, and in a flash, Fushigawara Shia disappeared in front of Guo Niao. "Die!" Fushigawara Shia's voice fell from the sky like a low thunder, and 10 huge wind blades smashed down. It was the breath of wind type 5 cold autumn falling mountain wind. Guo Niao raised her head with a sweet smile on her face, but Fushigawara Shia only felt disgusted by it. She raised her thin palm and tightly grasped the blade wind swung by Fushigawara Shia, and the man and the ghost were deadlocked. Fushigawara Shia was a little surprised. He didn't expect that this ghost could take on his sword skills with his bare hands. Guo Niao once again made a sincere invitation, "Shia, be my child." The purple incense spread over Guo Niao's arm and passed over the blade, and in a flash, it wrapped Fushigawara Shia into a marshmallow. In a trance, Fushigawara Shimizu saw himself who was beaten all day and his drunkard father whom he hated the second most in his life. "You damn boy, where's the money? Give it to me." Baikelu. Outside the illusion, the sword skills had long been lifted, and Fushigawara Shimizu's body fell uncontrollably, and Guo Xiao smiled and opened her arms. She smiled, and was also a false mother. Kano Kukin supported his seriously injured body and shouted, and every shout would tear the wound, "Shimizu, you can't stay silent in the past." Shimizu. Seeing that Fushigawara Shimizu was about to fall into Guo Xiao's arms, Kano Kukin was anxious. Guo Xiao was happy, Kukin was worried, and Fushigawara Shimizu had an expressionless face. Suddenly, Fushigawara Shimizu cut a knife on his chest, and blood flowed down along the emerald green blade. That's right. He forced himself to fantasize with a self-harming attack. Fushigawara Shia didn't care about the wound on his body at all, but took the opportunity to throw blood into Guhuo Bird's mouth. Guhuo Bird's eyes were wide open. She didn't understand why the ghost hunter would feed blood to the ghost in the battle. Isn't this a disguised way to help herself? Sure enough. Shia loves me. Thinking of this, Guhuo Bird twisted her body unconsciously, and every cell in her body was cheering. Fushigawara Shia suddenly laughed and even mocked. Ha ha ha. You want to trap me with that bastard, dream on. I want you to die. Fushigawara Shia was like a mad lion, opening his bloody mouth to bite Guhuo Bird's neck. A move of the 9 types Weichuo Tiantai wind was swung out, forming a tornado with Fushigawara Shia as the center, and 1,000 black wind blades gathered at the bottom of the tornado. Guhuo Niao was locked up tightly, and Fushigawara Shia seized the opportunity to swing a knife at her neck. The blade was like a poisonous snake, accurately locking the weakness of the prey. Guhuo Niao said in a crying voice, "My child, how could you do this to me?" Facing the threat of death, Guhuo Niao retreated through the wind field, and her body was instantly cut into 3 pieces. However, this minor injury was nothing for the ghost. In just a few breaths, the largest body had grown a complete body. Still wearing the purple kimono and the seductive smile. Before Fushigawara Shia landed, Guhuo Niao had already kicked him. Although he used sword skills to resolve it in time, the whole person was kicked into the house behind him. Guhuo Niao landed gracefully, but her body was a little shaky, and her face was a little red, as if she was drunk. But she didn't care, but wanted to eat Fushigawara Shia immediately. After all, he was thin blood. Shimai, come to your mother and let me eat you. The bird blinked at Shimai. Shimai stood up and suddenly found that there were several people sitting together around him. Hiding in the corner and shivering. Fushigawara Shimai quickly realized that this must be the person that Guhuo Bird had not eaten in time. Guhuo Bird walked towards Fushigawara Shimai and the frightened hostages step by step, and said with a smile, "Shimai, say hello to your brothers and sisters." Fushigawara Shimai's face was livid, and he rushed towards Guhuo Bird with a knife, cursing, "Disgusting! Go to hell!" He he he. Guhuo Bird covered his face, and the purple incense rushed towards Fushigawara Shimai like a surge. Unlike the beginning, the sword skills could not blow away the incense at all, and all the things in the past kept attacking Fushigawara Shimai. However, this trick no longer had any effect on him. He relied on a completely self-harming style of fighting. In just a few breaths, Fushigawara Shimai had more than 20 blood marks on his body, and the ground was already soaked with Fushigawara Shimai's blood. The air was even filled with the smell of blood. Guhuo Bird greedily captured the smell of thin blood in the air, completely unaware that it had the effect of making people drunk. Unconsciously, Guhuo Bird's limbs were somewhat out of control. Thin blood was no less tempting to ghosts than money was to people. The more greedy they were, the deeper they fell. Fushigawara Shia once again displayed the 9 form, and in an instant he came behind Guhuo Bird. The path he passed was covered with bomb-like black wind blades. But Guhuo Bird suddenly accelerated and rushed towards ordinary people, which was a lack of martial ethics. If Guhuo Bird used a set of lightning 5 whips, all the hostages would surely die, and Fushigawara Shia had to change his attack strategy. But at this moment, Kusano Masakichi held up a broken knife to block Guhuo Bird's hand knife. Clang! Half of the sun wheel sword broke again, and Guhuo Bird's hand knife also pierced Kusano Masakichi's heart, and blood instantly dyed Guhuo Bird's palm and kimono red. Jingyi Quangjin held Guhuo Niao tightly, and he would never let go. "You're in the way." Guhuo Niao cursed impatiently. In this way, Guhuo Niao pushed Jingyi Quangjin back and forth, and was about to rush into the place where the hostages were held. Chapter 61. Kuno Masahiro used his last strength to yell at Shia, "Shia, behead him, quickly!" Shia Fushigawara had no time to grieve, and he swung his knife angrily at almost the fastest speed in his life. The dark wind blade accompanied by the sun wheel sword sank into Guodari's neck, in from the left and out from the right, and Guodari's head flew out. Why did the world turn upside down? Guodari looked at Fushigawara Shia in front of her with a puzzled look, and she still had a smile on her face. Suddenly, she realized that she was beheaded, but she didn't know why. She had taken in many poor people and treated them as children, so why couldn't they understand her as a mother? Guo Xiao wanted to reach out and touch Fushigawara Shimizu, but she suddenly asked, Shimizu, do you want to be my child? Fushigawara Shimizu's eyes were filled with hatred and disgust. He roared, I can't do that even if I die, you damn evil ghost. Fushigawara Shimizu dropped the knife and threw Guo Xiao's body out. Blood gushed out immediately and Kusano Kukino fell down. Fushigawara Shimizu knelt on the ground. Kukino's blood stained his team uniform red. Fushigawara Shimizu hurried to stop the bleeding. Ahem. Quangjin held Fushigawara Shimai's hand, with an innocent smile on his face. He gently patted Fushigawara Shimai's head and said, Shimai, ahem, congratulations. Congratulations, you can become the wind pillar. You can catch up with your benefactor. Congratulations. Quangjin Fushigawara spit out a large mouthful of blood, his hands kept shaking, but he didn't regret it, his best friend was still alive, and ordinary people were not injured. Since the moment he joined the Demon Slayer Corps, he was ready to face the moment of death, and everyone in the Demon Slayer Corps was the same. Quangjin. Quangjin, you can't sleep. Fushigawara Shimai had already burst into tears, but Shimai's crying could not stop Quangjin's blood from flowing out. The wind pillar is yours, don't die, don't die. Fushigawara Shimai, who has always been fearless, showed his fear for the first time. What pillar, what upgrade, he no longer wants. He just didn't want his best friend to die. The strong wind whistled past, making the maple forest rustle. However, the sound of the wind could not cover the heart-wrenching cry of Fushigawara Shimizu. Since ancient times, little boys with the wind element have been sad, and being a best friend with the wind element is a high-risk profession. Kuang Quangjin raised his hand tremblingly, and his index finger left a bloodstain on Fushigawara Shimizu's cheek. Shimizu, live happily, think about your brother. Goodbye. In a trance, Kuang Quangjin seemed to see his dead brother. In the past. Just like now, he watched his brother die in front of him with his own eyes, and Shimizu looked very much like his deceased brother. The past passed through his mind like a revolving lantern, and Kuang Quangjin no longer had any regrets. It's great. It's great that he did it this time. The hand of Kusanagi Masachika slipped from the face of Fushigawara Shimizu, but he still had a smile on his face. Fushigawara Shimizu hugged his best friend tightly and cried loudly, Ah! Why? Quangjin! Rustle! Listen, the howling wind became smaller, and a green maple leaf fell down on the boat of the wind. The maple leaf just fell on Kusanagi Masachika's chest. This is the story of the wind. It's just that one of the thousands of winds flew away. The story of the wind ended, and the story of the wind began. Fushigawara Shimizu stopped crying, he tidied up his old friend's clothes, and knelt in front of him quietly. The silver crescent gradually moved away from the night sky, and the sun rose. The wind stopped, and the maple forest returned to its former tranquility. Even the nearest Fujiya was a night's journey away from this dilapidated house. The members of Yin didn't find this place until dawn with the crow. Looking at the dilapidated courtyard and the comrades lying on the ground, all the members were silent. They bowed their heads silently and mourned for their deceased teammates. Death was common in their eyes. It can be said that the members of Yin were the ones who witnessed the most deaths in the Demon Slayer Corps. Even though the death rate was reduced a lot with the addition of Kiritani, it was still sometimes not enough. Kiritani Kaoru and Kane rushed to Masaki Nakano together, but her healing skills could not bring people back to life. Kiritani Kaoru fell into Kane's arms, crying and apologizing. This was also the first time she saw death. Brother, sister Shinobu, everyone is on this road. But she still felt guilty, if only she could be faster. Sorry, really sorry, I'm late. Kaoru, you tried your best. Kane gently rubbed Kaoru's head. No one wants to see this happen, but most of the time, things don't go as planned. Fushigawara Shimai looked up and saw the person he had seen in the butterfly house. He remembered that the girl was called Kane, and he and Kuangjin had been taken care of by her. No, it's not your fault, Kuangjin left with a smile. Fushigawara Shimai said very calmly. Kane, who was always gentle, seemed to see the sadness that didn't belong to this age in the boy's eyes, and she couldn't help wanting to comfort him. Kane suddenly squatted down, then hugged Fushigawara Shimizu, and said softly, Don't be sad, please be happy, your friends must not want you to suffer all the time. Fushigawara Shimizu was stunned. This girl seemed like the warm sun in winter, and like warm spring water. This was the first time he received gentle comfort from someone other than his mother. Thank you. Fushigawara Shimizu answered blankly. The person is gone, and the sadness brought by the evil spirits can only be buried in the heart. Inherit the will of the deceased and live bravely. The team members of Yin began to rescue the trapped hostages and take care of the scene, while Sun treated the shocking wounds on Fushigawara Shimizu. Fushigawara Shimizu held the body of Kuono Masachika, and walked out of the maple forest step by step accompanied by Kane and a group of team members. He walked back to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters holding Masachika's body without stopping. Fuzukawa Shigeya personally buried Kusuno Masachika in the cemetery. After Fuzukawa left the cemetery, he walked in slowly. He looked sad and did not feel the joy of being killed. Because he lost an excellent swordsman, it was such a sad thing, and it was his own fault. He gently stroked the tombstone, but his eyes were particularly firm. Chapter 62. Yubayashiki Yoya narrated the past of Kono Masachika word for word. Every time a swordsman died, he would come to commemorate his compatriots in the dead of night. At the same time, thanks to Kiritani Sento's healing technique, there was only one purple blood vessel on Kono Masachika's face, and the curse had not yet dragged down his body. The next morning, Yubayashiki Yoya summoned the pillars without tasks to hold a promotion meeting for Fuzugawa Minoru. Still in the headquarters were the rock pillar, the flower pillar, the insect pillar, the snake pillar, and Jiyua from the twin water pillars and Kiritani Sento who had just returned from a mission last night. Fuzugawa Minoru stood there without saying a word, with a hint of resentment in his eyes. In his eyes, Yubayashiki Yoya was just a guy who used swordsmen as tools. It was clear that Kono Masachika's funeral had just been held yesterday, and he was in a hurry to hold a meeting. Yubayashiki Yoya naturally noticed Fushigawara Minoru's mood, but he didn't care at all. Seeing Yubayashiki Yoya smiling at him, Fushigawara Minoru turned his head to the side, complaining in his heart, "What a hypocritical guy." Yubayashiki Yoya looked around and asked, "Does anyone know where Rabbit has gone?" Everyone shook their heads. After all, Rabbit had been out on a mission for a month, and he just wrote to say that he would be back today. Just as everyone was waiting, Kiritani Sento suddenly opened the door with a candied haws in his mouth. Sorry. I'm late." Seeing Fushigawara Minoru, Kiritani Sento was a little surprised at first, but he quickly returned to normal and said with a smile, "Yo. We meet again, white-haired. Thank you for what happened before, I will repay you in the future." Fushigawara Minoru's words shocked everyone directly. These two white-haired people have a lot to eat. Koko Shinobu gave Kiritani Sento a look, indicating that you can experience it yourself. Hey! Kiritani Sento looked confused. Since the rabbit is back, let's get started. Kawiya Yubayashiki gestured to Kiritani Sento to sit down. Although Kiritani Sento didn't know what happened, he still sat down. Sania and Quangjin killed the current lower string one together, which is enough to be promoted to the pillar. What do you think? Kawiya Yubayashiki's smile healed people's hearts as usual, and even Kiritani Sento, who had traveled a long distance, felt a little relaxed. Since he killed the lower string, then his strength is strong enough. I have no objection, Amitabha. Agree. Everyone expressed their opinions, after all, everyone had the same experience. Fuzugawa Sania disliked Kawiya Yubayashiki more and more. He just wanted the Demon Slayer Corps to become stronger, why did he ignore Quangjin? Fushigawara Shima was also a man who spoke his mind. He pointed at Yubayashiki Yoya and shouted, "You bastard, we are nothing but tools in your eyes. Quangjin, do you know? Quangjin is dead." Fushigawara Shima's eyes were red, and he stared at Yubayashiki Yoya. This sudden performance confused everyone below, and Aguro Obanai drew the Nikaran sword on the spot. "Hey! You bastard, what's the matter? Be respectful to the Lord, I'll chop you off, tisk." It's understandable that a friend left, but it's unforgivable to be disrespectful to the Lord. Amitabha. Kiritani Sento was like a rabbit with its hair blown up, sandwiched between the crowd to mediate. Kiritani Sento's mouth twitched slightly. He didn't remember this. Didn't Hedgehog Head respect the boss? Calm down, we are all family, let's talk it out. Iguro Obanai stared at Fushigawara-san with an unhappy look on his face, and at the same time glanced at Tomioka Jiu. These two guys are just as infuriating. Yubayashiki Yoya slowly stood up, walked quickly to Fushigawara-san, and bowed slightly to apologize. My lord, no. The others hurried forward, and Yabayashiki Yoya waved his hand to indicate that it was okay. Saying, although I want to fight like everyone else, I am weak and have the will but not the strength, and I am the same as everyone else, and I can be replaced at any time. Finally, I am deeply sorry for the departure of Masachika Kyuzuno. Fushigawase suddenly froze. He originally thought that everyone was just a discarded pawn in his eyes, but he could actually call out Masachika's full name. The resentment in Fushigawase eyes completely dissipated under Yabayashiki Yoya's smile. Yabayashiki Yoya patted Fushigawa Minoru on the shoulder, pointed to the cemetery in the distance, and asked everyone to follow him. Yabayashiki Yoya led everyone to the grave of Masachika Ino. There was a letter. Yabayashiki Yoya turned around and said to Fushigawa Sanya gently, Sanya, this is the letter that Quangjin left for you. I think I'd better let him hand it to you in person. Fushigawa Sanya opened the envelope and recognized the handwriting at a glance. This was written by Quangjin himself. The letter read: Sanya, when you see this letter, I will be gone. But don't be sad, live happily, you really look like my deceased brother, and be friendly to people, don't always yell. And the Lord is super nice, you have to respect him too. Finally, I hope that the important people can live happily with a smile until the day they retire, and I hope their lives will never be threatened unreasonably. Even if I can't be alive to accompany them by then, I hope they can live. So, live happily with my will. My dear friend, Fushigawa Sanya. Fuswikawa Shimizu tightly grasped the letter paper, tears flowing down, as if Kusanagi Masachika was smiling in front of him. Yes, I have to live, I want to fulfill your last wish, Masachika. The haze in Fuswikawa Shimizu's eyes swept away, and his heart became really strong. Fuswikawa Shimizu turned around and bowed 90 degrees to Yabayashiki Yoya, and his words were full of guilt, my lord, I'm sorry. It's my fault, please forgive me. Yabayashiki Yoya hurriedly helped Fuswikawa Shimizu up and said with a smile, it's okay, it's understandable, but from today on, Shimizu, you are the wind pillar. Kiritani Sento came to Fuswikawa Shimizu. He had no impression of Kusanagi Masachika at all. It was his own mistake. He hugged Fuswikawa Shimizu and said, welcome, Shimizu. Tisk. That's more like it. Iguro Obanai understood. Tomiokaji nodded, and the butterfly sisters also expressed their understanding. The rock pillar did not speak, after all, the Lord had never blamed him. A breeze blew by, and a green wisteria leaf passed through everyone, and finally landed steadily in front of the grave of Masachika Ino. Isn't the letter from the old friend the wish of everyone in the Demon Slayer Corps? Chapter 63. Because of the addition of another pillar, Kiritani, who had been running around for a month, had a rare spare time. He was so tired of looking for Doma. That guy was a leader of a folk religion after all, so why was it so hard to find him? Damn Doma! Kiritani Sento roared in his heart. This was the demon he hated the most, no one else, even the scumbag boss ranked second. Rabbit, do you want to go shopping with us today? Just as Kiritani Sento was sorting out the information he had obtained this month, Koko Shinobu's slightly expectant voice came into his ears. Like Kiritani Sento, the butterfly sisters were also rarely free today, after all, Suzuki Haruko took care of all the medical work. What? Kiritani Sento fell off the wall of the butterfly house because he didn't lie down steadily. He raised his hand and responded, no problem at all. Great. No need to bring a knife today. Shinobu Koko pulled Kane back to the house with excitement, and they went to change clothes. About an hour later, the butterfly sisters came out of the house, and the two of them attracted the attention of everyone present as soon as they appeared. Kane Koko wore a light pink kimono, a high ponytail, and emerald green butterfly hairpins with pink edges on both sides of her hair. Her big black gemstone-like eyes sparkled, and her gentle smile made people feel like they were soaking in a hot spring. Kane gently pulled Shinobu Koko behind her. Shinobu Koko had been hiding behind Kane since she came out. Shinobu, come out quickly, you are a little different today. Kiritani Sento's eyes lit up when he heard Kane's words. If you want to talk about Shinobu's usual appearance, she has a neat short hair and looks like a tomboy. Shinobu Koko lowered her head and walked out in small steps, seemingly not used to wearing a kimono. Shinobu, raise your head. Kane raised her sister's stubborn pointed chin. Just then, a breeze blew by, bringing up a purple wisteria flower. Shinobu Koko was wearing a lavender kimono, and her beautiful long hair danced in the wind. Shinobu's high ponytail was tied with a mint-colored butterfly hairpin with a purple edge. Her tender little face was flushed, like a budding water lily. Shinobu Koko was a little afraid to look into Kiritani Sento's eyes. She asked in a low voice, "Rabbit, am I pretty?" Kiritani Sento smiled like a big fool. He didn't even know when Shinobu had grown long hair. This was more than beautiful, it was simply beautiful beyond description, absolutely amazing. He raised his thumb and said confidently and loudly, "Beautiful, so beautiful. I can watch it all day, really." Kane covered her mouth and laughed, then teased, "Ah. Then I am not beautiful." Kiritani Sento waved his hands quickly, "No, no, no, Sister Hui is also beautiful." "Okay, okay. I won't tease you anymore, you two can chat first. I'm going to find Sun." Before the two of them could react, Kane walked out of the door. Koko Shinobu pointed in the direction of Kane's departure and shouted, "Sister, don't joke around." As she said that, Koko Shinobu strode forward, but she completely forgot that she was wearing a kimono and lost her balance directly. Kiritani Sento exclaimed, "Shinobu." Then he immediately hugged each other, and the faint scent of wisteria flowers filled his nose. All the eyes of the people around him gathered here. Koko Shinobu was immediately ashamed and angry, and buried her head deeply in Kiritani Sento's chest. Ouch! So embarrassing! Kiritani Sento looked at the swordsman around him with a smug look on his face. What could be happier than holding his beloved girl in his arms? "Shinobu, your face is so red," Kiritani Sento complained. Suddenly, Kiritani Sento felt a soreness in his waist, and then Koko Shinobu complained in a low voice, "If it weren't for being more feminine, I would never wear this thing." "Wrong, wrong, I was wrong. Shinobu is beautiful now and in normal times. A real man can bend and stretch, and he has to be cowardly for his waist." Kiritani Sento supported Koko Shinobu and walked out of the headquarters. Kiritani Sento's smile froze instantly. Because Tomioka Jiua was standing next to Kaoru, Kiritani Sento's head was buzzing instantly. This was a house that was robbed. Tomioka Jiua greeted Kiritani Sento in a friendly manner, "Rabbit." Chako Shinobu raised Kiritani Sento's arm and waved, while Kiritani Sento wanted to stab Jiua again. What on earth is so charming about this kid? My Kaoru is the angel of the butterfly house. Kiritani Kaoru glared at Kiritani Sento, "Brother, brother." "Yes, yes, yes." Kiritani Sento replied helplessly. "Poor old man, the sister I raised has turned her elbow outward." In a blink of an eye, the few people spent a day walking in the town. Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Jiu each carried countless bags with clothes, food, and a lot of things. The three girls walked in front, talking and laughing, and Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Jiu followed them closely. Kiritani Sento's silver hair was already eye-catching, and with the three beautiful girls, passers-by looked here unconsciously. As they walked, the passers-by in front of them suddenly made way, and a fierce guy with a few younger brothers walked towards Shinobu Koko and the other two. "Go, go, Scarface is a well-known bully in this area. Yes, these young people are in danger. There's no way, those three girls are too pretty." Scarface stopped Shinobu Koko and the other two with a squinting face, and said in a lewd way, "Little sister, do you want to play with your brother?" Shinobu Koko said with disgust, "Stay away from us, disgusting." "Ha ha ha. Stay away, it's your blessing that the master likes you, girl, don't be shameless." Just when Scarface was about to take action, a younger brother pulled him back and whispered, "Brother, there is still a deal today, there are plenty of women. No hurry, I will stop them today. Why don't you ask about my connections? No one of you three can leave today." Shinobu Koko's face was gloomy, and her hand had already touched her thigh, where there was a dagger, but it was not convenient to take it. If it weren't for the kimono, this guy would have fallen to the ground now. Scarface had no idea what kind of person he had offended, and looked at Shinobu Koko with a smug look on his face and said, "The girl is quite hot, I like her. Ha ha ha. And the silver-haired one is quite rare." Kane protected Kiritani Kaoru behind her, and at the same time observed a 3-second silence for this outspoken guy. Chapter 64. Kiritani Sento clenched his sandbag-sized fist and punched Scarface's lower abdomen hard, and Scarface almost vomited his stomach. Kiritani Sento said coldly, "Don't you dare to repeat what you just said again? You think I don't exist, Right. Scarface knelt on the ground with his hands covering his stomach, his face showing a fierce look. He stared at Kiritani Sento with resentment, murderous intent, and no one has ever dared to hit me. The other brothers saw the boss being beaten, and they all rushed to Kiritani Sento with weapons, but Kiritani Sento ignored them completely. Tomioka Gyuyu just stood there and knocked down one by one. He was like an insurmountable cordon. Stop, don't cross. Tomioka Gyuyu said expressionlessly. Scarface raised his head and asked with disdain, do you know who I am? Kiritani Sento didn't hesitate, and slapped Scarface by the backhand. He grabbed Scarface's collar and asked. Do you know who I am? Kiritani Sento doesn't like to cause trouble, but he is definitely not a person who allows others to bully him. He doesn't care who you are. Anyway, there is no surveillance in this era. Passers-by were very happy to see it. They can be said to have suffered Scarface for a long time. After a while, Scarface was beaten by Kiritani Sento. His mother couldn't recognize him. Scarface grabbed Kiritani Sento's arm and gasped heavily, as if he was going to be buried in the next moment. Brother, stop hitting me, I was wrong. Wrong, I feel you are not wrong. Kiritani Sento punched again, one was forbearance and the other was my sister, you are looking for a fight. Shinobu and Kane pulled Kaoru away from the scene. This hooligan deserved to be beaten. He was a bully and disgusting. Scarface regretted it now. Who could have thought that a boy was so fierce? For a moment, he felt like he was fighting with a beast. Kiritani Sento patted Scarface's shoulder, showing a harmless smile, and said, Uncle, confess and be lenient, resist and be strict, be a human being. Otherwise I will beat you every time I see you. Scarface kept nodding, and in his heart he cursed Kiritani Sento as a devil. Why can you laugh? Kiritani Sento walked past Yi Yang, and Scarface's younger brother automatically made way for him, fearing that he would provoke this devil. Yi Yang, let's go, let's go. Seeing the two men walking away, Scarface's men quickly lifted up their boss and ran away. One of them even asked, Boss, what about that slave? Scarface punched the man and yelled, Sell it, of course I have to sell it. I heard that the guy just needs to give me food. On the edge of the town, rows of thatched houses stood there. Compared with the bustling streets, this place was worse than a pigsty. Scarface led his men to a battle-damaged thatched house. Under the eaves of the thatched house, a little girl in coarse linen clothes curled up. There were countless holes in the clothes, as if even the most basic function of covering shame could not be achieved. Feeling the sunlight disappear in front of her, the girl mechanically raised her head, her eyes full of despair. Scarface looked at the place where the pigs lived with disdain and shouted to the thatched house, Where are the people? Come out for me, where are the goods? As soon as Scarface finished speaking, a haggard couple rushed out of the thatched house in a hurry. The wife went up to meet Scarface, and the man kicked the little girl away. He said with disdain, I gave birth to a waste like you, and you eat my food for free every day. Scarface pushed the woman away and rudely lifted the girl's collar, revealing the scars all over her body. Scarface's eyes were not looking at a person but at an animal. Tisk, she's too skinny, just bones. Can she work? The man quickly took out a hemp rope from behind and skillfully put it on his own daughter. He smiled and said to Scarface, Sir, you can give her a discount. She is obedient, she must be obedient, otherwise you can beat her. As he spoke, the man handed the other end of the hemp rope to Scarface. Tisk. Only 4/5, her face is not good. After hearing Scarface's words, the couple finally breathed a sigh of relief, as if they had finally thrown away the garbage in their hands. Scarface pulled the girl, she was like an emotionless robot, she would not shout when beaten, and would not talk back when scolded, because she knew that if she shouted, she would only get a beating. Watching Scarface leave, the woman complained, It's all your fault. You didn't let her eat more. Look, how much money is missing. That little beast you can't even speak, it's good enough to be sold. They sold their own daughter and didn't forget to curse. They are simply the most hateful parents in the world. Under the setting sun, a bald boy dragged the girl across the wooden bridge, cursing and kicking her from time to time, Damn it, it's all because of you, I can't be happy. Damn it. At this time, a couple passed by with a little girl, and each of them held one of the girl's hands. The little girl was like a little bird, chirping and talking to her parents, and the couple looked doting. Mom, I want to eat rice balls and fish cooked by Dad tonight. The man smiled and touched his daughter's little head, then picked her up. No problem, Dad will make it for you. A warm family of 3 passed by the girl. One girl was the sun, and the other girl was a mouse in the sewer. The world is the same, but people are completely different. The girl turned her head stiffly, with envy in her eyes. The bald boy slapped the girl in the face and threw her to the ground. He spat at the girl and cursed, "You are a beast, what qualifications do you have to envy others?" Cut. The girl was stunned for a moment, and her world lost its color in an instant, and everything was grey. Want to cry? What are tears? Forget it, you will be beaten again. The girl held back her tears. What qualifications did she have to cry? Hurry up and stand up. Baga Yalu. The bald boy kicked the girl again, but the girl avoided the vitals with her sharp eyesight. If she didn't have these eyes, she would have been beaten to death by her parents. Ren, that child is so pitiful. Let's save her. Kane's eyes were full of heartache. She couldn't stand seeing the suffering of the world, especially such a young child. She is so pitiful. Kaoru ran up directly. Kirigaya and Sento, who were a few meters behind, didn't see clearly what was happening in front of them. Shinobu Koko simply snatched the hemp rope from the bald brother's hand. Chapter 65. The bald man jumped up and down in anger, pointing at Shinobu Koko and yelling, "Hey! You damned guy, I paid for it. Do you still respect the law? I'll kill you." The furious man turned his head to look at Kane Koko and Kaoru Kiritani. Looking at the other's warm smile, he felt as if he had seen them somewhere. Silver hair? Isn't this the guy's man? Soon, the bald man's body began to tremble, because Sento Kiritani and Jiu Tomioka just arrived. The bald man's thighs kept shaking, and he pointed at Kiritani and said, "Devil, mother, save me." Without any hesitation, the bald man turned around and ran. Kiritani grabbed his collar and said with a puzzled look, "Hey! Am I that scary? Why are you running?" The bald man's tears flowed down, making Kiritani look like a bad guy. "Brother, you are too unreasonable. We bought it with our own money. You are robbing it." Kiritani. Kane hurriedly went to Kiritani's ear to explain, and Kiritani understood immediately. He didn't expect that Kaneo was rescued from this group of people by the Butterfly Sisters. He originally thought that this was just an ordinary shopping trip. Kiritani took out a stack of money from his arms and threw it directly at the other person's face. "That's enough, get out of here." Looking at the more money than he paid, the bald man turned from sadness to joy, like a pug. He thought he had no money, but he didn't expect to be given more. Okay, I'll get out right away. See you, big brother." The bald man ran away happily, and Kiritani Zanto was speechless. His face changed so quickly. Butterfly House. The girl stood in the middle blankly, and Kiritani Zanto and the other 5 surrounded her. Everyone had already tried their best, but the girl seemed to be mute. Tomioka Jiuo looked at the girl. He seemed to remember himself on that snowy night a few years ago, and he couldn't help but feel pity. He heard Sun say that a smile can comfort others, so Jiuo showed the smile that others owed him 100 million. The girl and everyone present were stunned for a moment, and the girl who had been somewhat relieved suddenly became autistic. Jiuo then said something out of place, "Didn't they say that a smile can heal people?" Bang! The door of the room opened, and Jiuo was kicked out of the group chat. There was another bang, and Tomioka Jiuo squatted under the eaves with his hands in his pockets, his head full of question marks. He still didn't understand what happened. Kiritani Sento squatted in front of the girl, wanting to reach out and touch her head to comfort her, but the girl subconsciously dodged. It's impossible to avoid at such a close distance, the girl thought. Just as the girl was trembling all over, she found that the big brother just touched her head. So gentle, so warm, the girl felt a feeling she had never experienced since she was a child. Kiritani Sento tried to lower his voice as much as possible. "Let me ask you a few questions. Don't worry, just think about it slowly." The girl became flustered when Kiritani Sento spoke, and then began to sweat all over, and then froze instantly. Kiritani suddenly remembered that Kaneo had post-traumatic stress disorder, and she would panic when asked about her thoughts, but she didn't make a scene, but would sweat all over and then freeze. She was abrupt, and the girls looked at Kiritani again. "You scared her again." So with a bang, Kiritani squatted next to Tomioka Jiuo with her hands in her pockets, and "Jiuo, who was still confused, was even more confused now. Brother, Jiu, you too should reflect on it. Look at me and scare me. Sun scolded and closed the door. Kiritani, hey. Tomioka Jiu, hey. The girl realized that the people here were different from her parents and the group of people, they were good people. In the end, Kane and Sun, the most gentle people present, kept comforting the girl, but everyone was also in trouble. After all, the child had no name. Everyone, give her a name. Kane patted the girl's back gently. She probably realized that the girl was afraid to think, so she gave her a choice directly. Child, just choose a name you like. Cao Shinobu was the first to speak. How about calling her chickweed? Chickweed is a plant, also known as goose intestine grass. How about calling her Rika? Kaoru also gave his own opinion, because now there are Haruko sister, Kane sister, Shinobu sister, Aoi and me in the disc house, there are 5 of us. Just then, the door was suddenly opened, and Kiritani Zantu also expressed his opinion. Kanaho, how about calling her this? Because she suddenly appeared, she can be said to be a sister given by God to everyone. Kanaho looked at the girl and asked softly, Child, just choose one. The girl pointed to Kiritani Zantu without any hesitation. Yet. Rabbit wins. Bang. Kiritani Zantu was locked out by Koko Shinobu, who complained, your sudden appearance like this will scare Kaneo. Oh, I see. After 2 months of careful care from everyone in the butterfly house, Kaneo's condition has obviously improved a lot, although she is still shy and always hides in the dark. But at least there is a ray of light in her eyes, and there is hope for life. Everyone is very serious and responsible in taking care of this new little sister. After all, Kiritani Sento proposed a small game, to help Kaneo choose a surname 2 months later. Compared with the given name, the surname is obviously more important. It was a familiar place again. Kaneo was chewing on the candied haw silently. This snack has almost become the team meal of the Demon Slayer Corps through the promotion of Kiritani Sento. Almost everyone can make candied haws. When the team members eat candied haws, they will think of the kind and amiable Master Hitomi. There were several notes in front of Kaneo, with Kiritani, cheese, Kanzaki, Tomioka and chestnut flour fall added by Kane temporarily. Kanzaki Aoi stared at Kaneo closely. She really wanted her to inherit her surname. Kanzaki Aoi is a medical staff of the butterfly house. She is a girl with black hair, blue eyes and twin ponytails wearing a blue butterfly hair ornament. She has a white nursing suit on top of the standard Demon Slayer Corps uniform. But she has not participated in the final selection yet. After all, she is still in training. Kanaho, the surname Kanzaki is super awesome. As she spoke, Kanzaki Aoi took out 2 candied haws from behind her. 4 pointed stars instantly lit up in Kaneo's eyes, and she habitually chewed in small bites, but she didn't seem to notice it. Chapter 66. Xiao Kui, you are so mean. Kane reluctantly separated the 2 girls, looked at Kaneo with a smile, and motioned for her to choose one. After repeated selections, only 2 pieces of paper were left on the table, one was Kiritani and the other was Liwuluo. Looking at Kaneo with her eyes swaying left and right, Kaneo and the other 2 held their breath. Was she going to choose a surname? Which one would it be? For some reason, the 3 of them suddenly became curious. In the end, Kaneo chose Liwuluo. The 3 of them hugged Kaneo and cheered. This poor child finally had a complete name. Liwuluo Kaneo, this is your name, a complete name, and Butterfly House will always be your home. Kane hugged the girl tightly, her eyes full of joy. Kaneo grabbed the remaining notes, and everyone didn't want to ask why, as long as Kaneo liked it. The day after Kaneo chose her name, Kiritani Sento, who was on a mission, returned to the headquarters. This time, he seemed a little heavy because he finally met the people of the Eternal Paradise. That also meant that the Demon Slayer Corps had to face Doma, who was ranked 2nd in strength among the 12 demon moons. That was a real waxing moon. After reporting to Yabayashiki Yoya, Kiritani Sento went home first and then went to the butterfly house. As usual, Kiritani Sento bought gifts for everyone. He was quite disappointed when he learned that Shinobu was not there, but he was not surprised at all about Kaneo's full name. Anyway, Kaneo should have been called this name. In the yard of the butterfly house, Kiritani Sento and Kane sat on the wooden stakes used for training, and Kane stared at Kiritani Sento's eyes closely. She could see that Rabbit brought incredible news this time, but she also had a bad premonition in her heart. After a long time of thinking, Kane suddenly asked, "Rabbit, you have something on your mind, is it about Shinobu?" Kiritani Sento turned his head to one side unconsciously. He did have something on his mind, that is, he didn't want Shinobu Koko to go in this operation. After all, everyone was going to face upper rank too. The strength between upper rank and lower rank was a qualitative gap, and he was not sure he could protect everyone. "Sister Hui, I found the whereabouts of the upper rank demon," Kiritani Sento said slowly. Kane was stunned at first, and then took a breath of cold air. She had never seen the upper rank, but she heard from her master that all the pillars who had seen the upper rank did not survive. The thoughtful Kane instantly knew what Kiritani Sento was thinking and asked, "You don't want Shinobu to participate in the operation?" Kiritani Sento did not deny it, but nodded instead. He admitted that he was a little selfish. Kane patted Kiritani Sento's shoulder gently and said gently, "Don't feel burdened, but you still have to follow Xiao Shinobu's opinion. She is too strong." "I know, Sister Hui, if there is danger, I will die first." "Pft, pft. Don't talk nonsense, no one can die." The next moment, a petite person suddenly hugged Kiritani Sento from behind, and she said with a crying voice, "Rabbit, don't think about stopping me. I won't let you die." Seeing her sister coming back, Kane left here consciously. Not long after she left, Shinobu leaned on Kiritani Sento's back and cried. Koko Shinobu's little fist kept hitting Kiritani Sento. She complained, "You always risk your life for others every day. Have you ever thought about my feelings?" Kiritani Sento had nothing to say. He made Shinobu cry, and his heart was a little confused. Kiritani Sento shook his head and tried to calm himself down. Kiritani Sento turned around, hugged Shinobu tightly in his arms, and said in a relaxed manner, "Little fool, what are you thinking about? I am a rabbit, a genius who uses double breathing, and I will never die. He he he." Shinobu Koko raised her head and stared at Kiritani Sento with red and swollen eyes. She was there when he and his sister just talked, and she knew everything. "I also want to go on the mission to eliminate the upper strings. Who will watch you otherwise?" Kiritani Sento turned his head tactically and answered stupidly, that depends on the boss's arrangement." "Shinobu, you can't disobey the boss. Yubayashiki Kaoru can always calm down all the pillars, and this trick can be said to be tried and tested." Shinobu Koko left and pulled Kiritani Sento towards Yubayashiki Kaoru's mansion. She wanted to make it clear with the lord. Kiritani Sento pulled Koko Shinobu back and held her slender waist with his right hand. Shinobu was like a furious cat, ready to bite Kiritani Sento at any time. Kiritani Sento kissed her forcefully, and Koko Shinobu was a little confused. Shinobu Koko struggled to push Kiritani Sento away, but the second bite followed. After a series of operations, Kiritani Sento kissed Shinobu Koko until she had no strength left. Shinobu Koko blushed and stared at Sento Koko unhappily. "You lecherous rabbit." "Yes, I just want to be lecherous to Shinobu, he he he." Sento Koko, who had had enough, replied shamelessly. Shinobu Koko was so angry that she laughed. She had always understood that whether it was her sister or the rabbit, they always thought that they would go first when something happened. Okay. I promise to be alive. Isn't it just an upper string? Look at me kicking its ass." Speaking of this, Sento Koko began to punch and kick the air. His funny appearance made Shinobu Koko not know whether to cry or laugh. After the performance, Sento Koko reached into his arms, and soon he took out a small wooden sculpture that was more than 10 centimeters high. From the appearance, it was a smaller version of Sento Koko. This was the finished product that he carved for nearly a year. Kiritani Sento put the wood carving in Shinobu Koko's hand and said proudly, "Isn't it amazing? I carved it for a year. When I'm not with you, let the little rabbit accompany you. The effect is excellent." Looking at the wood carving making faces in his hand, tears flowed again. If the tears just now were bitter, then the tears now are sweet. Kiritani Sento was panicked. Why did Shinobu cry again? Oh my! Kiritani Sento hurriedly approached Shinobu Koko and asked helplessly, "Shinobu, I was wrong. Don't cry. You will tear up your face." Shinobu Koko burst into laughter. She stood on tiptoes and kissed Kiritani Sento on the lips. "The little rabbit is cute. Then I'll give you a gift too." Shinobu Koko carefully put away the little rabbit and put the butterfly hairpin into Kiritani Sento's hand. This is a gift from my mother, and now I give it to you. Kiritani Sento was stunned. The hairpin may be ordinary, but it is the only one given by his deceased parents. Koko Shinobu held Kiritani Sento's big hand, smiling with curved eyebrows, and whispered, "It's okay, I entrust it to you." The sunset dyed half of the sky red, and a ray of sunlight shone through the swaying wisteria tree onto the butterfly hairpin and the small wooden sculpture. Chapter 67. The Demon Slayer Corps has killed countless lower strings, but has never killed any upper strings in hundreds of years, and has not even known the whereabouts of the upper strings. Since Yubayashiki Yoya took over the Demon Slayer Corps, a grand meeting of the pillars has been held for the first time. Kiritani Sento came to Yubayashiki Yoya's house early. After all, he is the first person in charge of this operation. Whether history can be changed depends on this time. Once the operation is successful, the passive state of the Demon Slayer Corps for hundreds of years will be broken. The first to arrive was Gyumei Sadome Samura, who guarded the headquarters, and the latecomers were the mission-crazed Fuzugawa Minoru and Aguro Obanai. The 10 pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps gathered together for the first time. They lined up from left to right, and the powerful aura enveloped the whole venue. They half knelt in front of Yubayashiki Yoya. Rock Pillar, Gyumei Sadome Samura. The Flame Pillar, Rengoku Kyojuro. The Wind Pillar, Fuzugawa Minoru. The Flower Pillar, Koko Kane. The Water Pillar, Tomioka Jiyu. The Water Pillar, Kanoha Uzumaki. The Snake Pillar, Iguro Obanai. The Sound Pillar, Dozui Tenjin. The Insect Pillar, Koko Shinobu. Together with the Eye Pillar, Kiritani Sento, who stood in the front, the strongest fighters of the Demon Slayer Corps were all present. Yubayashiki Yoya could not hide his excitement and said passionately, "Everyone, I believe you also know the theme of this meeting of the pillars. I declare that the plan to annihilate the upper rank has officially started." Fuzugawa Minoru and Aguro Obanai, who have a deep hatred for demons, were very happy. Killing the upper rank was what they had always wanted to do. "Everyone, the news we got this time is about upper rank too. From the ranking, we can see that it is a very strong enemy. I hope you will go all out." As soon as Yubayashiki Yoshiya finished speaking, a sonorous answer came from below. "Got it, my lord." Yubayashiki Yoshiya nodded with satisfaction. It can be said that the Demon Slayer Corps is the luckiest thing to have 10 pillars in just a few years. Then, our pupil pillar will be in charge of this operation. He will share information, and I plan to send half of the pillars to hunt down upper rank too. This is not to belittle everyone, but this operation is related to the dignity of the Demon Slayer Corps. As soon as Yubayashiki Yoshiya finished speaking, Kiritani Battle Rabbit came out with a homemade bamboo board. A picture with a big turtle pattern was nailed on the bamboo board, and there was even a thoughtful little arrow annotating the pattern, and the annotation was exactly upper rank too. Kiritani Sento took out a small bamboo stick from somewhere, cleared his throat, and said in a humorous way, "Everyone, the rabbit class is open, please take your pens and papers and listen carefully. Also, since we don't know what upper rank 2 looks like, we will use a big turtle instead. Everyone, just bear with it." As he said that, Kiritani Sento pointed at the turtle with a bamboo stick. His series of actions made everyone laugh, and the originally heavy atmosphere instantly became cheerful. Uzui Tenjin gave Kiritani Sento a thumbs up and praised, "Rabbit, your description is so gorgeous." "That's right, I like it very much, thanks to your investigation, Rabbit." Kyojuro's hearty laughter swept the audience again. Ahem. Next, our classmate Shinobu will hand out a set of study materials to everyone. They are all some information about upper rank 2, although some of them still need to be verified. As soon as Kiritani Sento finished speaking, everyone's eyes turned to Koko Shinobu. Tisk tisk tisk. Everyone knows the relationship between Koko Shinobu and Kiritani Sento. If it weren't for the existence of the evil spirits, everyone might have already eaten the young couple's feast. Koko Shinobu lowered her head and tried not to look at the other pillars. Her heart was beating non-stop. Damn rabbit, stinky rabbit. Koko Shinobu regretted it very much now. She agreed yesterday when her brain was hot. Regarding Doma, Kiritani Sento only knew some basic information, such as he was the founder of the Eternal Paradise cult, and blood demon art was related to ice, etc. Looking at the information card with only one piece of paper, everyone's expressions were very serious. Although there were only some basic information, this was news about the upper rank. Who would have thought that the rabbit had spent so much effort to find this information? Although the paper was light, everyone felt the heavy effort of the rabbit. Bai Minjiahu Xing Ming sighed on the spot, "Rabbit, you have worked hard. It must not be easy." Amitabha. Yes, yes, it is indeed not easy. Xiangtu echoed. Kiritani Xanta scratched his head embarrassedly. After all, it was a big most of the information was summarized by him as a time traveler, otherwise it would take 2 years to collect the information of the upper ranks who disappeared from the face of the earth. As for why the upper ranks annihilation plan was launched, it was because Kiritani Sento really met the followers of the Eternal Paradise cult, and Taromaru is still tracking them. In a one-on-one fight with the upper rank too, Kiritani Sento thought that it would be difficult without the red sword and the stripes. After all, he had no system and no invincible strength. He knew very well that his current strength was really achieved by swinging the sword one by one, although he had the assistance of Crescent Moon Eye. After reading the information, everyone had a rough idea in their minds. If you meet the upper ranks, you are doomed. This sentence is not a joke but a warning left by the predecessors. Everyone, regarding upper rank too, I plan to start with his religion. We will pretend to be believers and sneak into the inner circle, and then the others will observe from the outside. When the time comes, we will work together inside and outside to destroy the evil ghost's lair in one fell swoop. Also, the butterfly house will provide enough wisteria poison, and none of us can die. Iguro Obanai frowned and cursed, "Damn ghost, it's learning religion from humans, it's disgusting. I want to be beheaded now. I'm going to go on this operation." Fuswigawa Mia immediately said, "Count me in, I can't sleep if I don't kill him. Amitabha, I must act this time." Yubayashiki Yoya waved his hand to signal everyone to be quiet, and everyone was very respectful, but the resentment towards the ghost still remained on their faces. Yubayashiki Yoshia's voice, as clear as nectar, instantly soothed everyone's hatred-filled hearts. He slowly said, "Everyone, I said at the beginning that half of the pillar-level swordsmen will be sent. As for the list, I have already decided, I hope everyone can do their job." Kiritani Battle Rabbit continued Yubayashiki Yoshia's words and said, "Everyone, I am the person in charge of this operation, so count me in, there are still 4 spots left." The remaining 9 people were all full of expectations, even though they were about to face the crescent moon, which was a sure death. Chapter 68. Looking at the shining eyes of the crowd, Yubayashiki Yoya, who was always calm and composed, couldn't help but joked, "Everyone, don't look at me like that, you can look at the rabbit." Yubayashiki Yoya took a deep breath and announced the list with full confidence. "Shimizu, Kyojuro, Obanai, Jiyu, the 4 of you will follow the rabbit and the members of the hidden team will be on standby at the nearest place. I wish you all good luck in martial arts." "Yes, I guarantee to complete the mission." The deep voice echoed in Yubayashiki's mansion. Yubayashiki Yoya also considered again and again before deciding on the list. Since it was the first time to deal with the waxing moon, he chose the pillars with relatively strong strength. There is no doubt that 2 of the 3 strongest forces of the Demon Slayer Corps have been sent out, leaving only Jiyome to deal with emergencies. The flame breath of Rabbit and Kyojuro has a certain suppression on the blood demon arts of ice attribute, so sending them is the most suitable. Fuzugawa Shima and Iguro Obanai clapped their hands happily. As people who hate evil demons, their ideas are very compatible, so they have a good relationship. The mission members are determined, and Yubayashiki Yoya leads the remaining pillars to bid farewell to nobody at the Boundary Monument. "I wish you all good luck in martial arts." Yubayashiki Yoya bowed deeply. As the Lord of the Demon Slayer Corps, he deeply apologized for not being able to accompany them at the most critical moment. "Everyone, you must stay alive. Kane's smile as bright as spring water is particularly healing." Fuzugawa Shima unconsciously turned his head to the side and happened to look at Kiritani Sento, which was embarrassing. Kiritani Sento whispered with a smirk on his face, "Sister Hui has always been very gentle." After saying that, Kiritani Sento did not forget to raise his eyebrows, "Looking like a brother, you understand. You're so long-winded." Tisk. Fushigawara Minoru turned his head to the other side proudly. Shinobu Koko tightly held the rabbit wooden sculpture, and her eyes never left Kiritani Sento. Kiritani Sento showed an extremely confident smile, with her head slightly tilted, and also stared at Shinobu Koko. Suddenly, Kiritani Sento shouted, "Shinobu, if I come back alive, will you be my girlfriend?" "What? I'll go." "What?" The others immediately looked at Kiritani Sento, who was not shy at all, but smiled and said, "Hey! It's so handsome to confess in front of everyone, okay? Kyojuro hugged Kiritani Sento and laughed and said, ha ha ha. You are worthy of being a rabbit. Kiritani Sento said that I want to be a rabbit that beats flags, that's how fierce it is. Shinobu Koko threw away her shyness, rushed out of the crowd and threw herself into Kiritani Sento's arms. She nodded like a chicken pecking at rice, and her voice was as soft as water. I agreed the first time we met 3 years ago. I'm waiting for you. As a conservative girl, Shinobu Koko kissed Sento Kiritani in front of everyone for the first time, which was a perfect example of dog food. Fukushima. Several grown men were sitting in the hotel drinking water. Passers-by stayed away from them because they were new faces that they had never seen before and might not be good people. This guy is the one who delivers food to that devil's religion. It seems that beating him up is helping the evil. Fuzugawa Shima complained. Kyojuro quickly held down Shimizu and whispered, he must be the one, after all, there are always people wearing black robes coming here recently. It's possible that he is from the Eternal Paradise cult. But forget about beating him. Kiritani Sento suddenly reminded, he's here, it's your turn to perform, Hedgehog Head. Fuzugawa Shimizu. In order to facilitate the task, Kiritani Sento gave everyone a code name. He is the rabbit, Kyojuro is the big brother, Obanai is the little snake, and Jiyu is the face-paralyzed boy. The boss trembled in front of everyone, his voice was as thin as a mosquito, and his thighs were shaking non-stop. Excuse me, can you change to another store? Hey! Fuzugawa Shimizu suddenly turned his head, and his eyes that were intimidating without anger plus the right amount of intimidation scared the boss to fall down. Looking at the scars all over the other person's body, the boss prayed, God, bless me. Kiritani Sento pretended to be helpless and held Fuzugawa sane. He whispered, Sane, you are going to scare people to death, let me do it. Really? The other three nodded, and Fuzugawa sane immediately sat down and didn't say anything. Kiritani Sento squatted in front of the boss with a smile, and then handed him a stack of money, and the boss's fragile heart immediately became strong. Boss, we are staying for a few days, this is the deposit. And my brother, he is actually a good person, but he just looks fierce. The boss showed a professional smile, I can see that the brother just looks fierce. By the way, don't tell outsiders, understand? The boss tried his best to hide his inner joy and nodded frantically. After all, this money was enough to pay 10 people. By the way, boss, have you heard of the Wanshi-Jile religion? I want to believe in a religion. Kiritani Sento naturally acted pious, which made the boss confused. It turned out that rich people are different. The boss put the money in his pocket, and a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. After all, he was responsible for the meals of that group of people recently, and he really knew what the Eternal Paradise Church was. Kiritani Sento immediately stuffed another stack of coins into the boss. Everything that happened today was planned in advance by the 5 people. After all, the last stop of the believers followed by Taromaru was this hotel. The only thing Kiritani Sento could be sure of was that the believers were still in this city, but he didn't know the specific location. So this boss was the breakthrough point. After observing for the past few days, this boss was particularly greedy for money. Kiritani Sento liked the boss's personality very much. Things that can be solved with money are simple, especially for greedy people. Ahem. Little brother, don't tell outsiders. Considering your devout belief in the religion, I will tell you a gathering place for the believers. Kiritani Sento was particularly surprised. He asked, Boss, do you believe in this too? The boss waved his hand and replied, Little brother, they are just a bunch of women, I am just delivering food. But of course I can tell you the location, as for whether they will take you, I don't know. Kiritani Sento patted the boss's shoulder and had some plans in mind. It's okay, I am a devout believer. After paying enough money, the boss enthusiastically arranged rooms for everyone. Since the meal delivery time is at night, Kiritani Sento and his friends need to wait. Finding the believers of the Eternal Paradise religion can be said to be half of the mission completed. Next, they just need to follow them to find Doma's hiding place. The moonlight gradually flooded the hotel, and the boss knocked on Kiritani Sento's door. Chapter 69. Kiritani Sento opened the door, and Tomioka Jiyu stood beside him silently. His cold eyes made the boss tremble. What is this? The boss asked stutteringly. Didn't we agree that there would be only one person? Why is there another one? The boss only dared to think about it in his heart. After all, the black-haired man had a blank expression and was a little scary. Kiritani Sento pressed the boss's shoulder and said, "It's okay, my brother, there's something wrong with his brain, pitiful." Ah! Kiritani Sento sighed and looked very disappointed. Hearing Kiritani Sento's words, the boss breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out to be a fool, so it was okay. Tomioka Jiua was completely speechless, but it could only be like this. He couldn't let Rabbit take risks alone, and he had to protect him for Kaoru. The boss pushed the cart and disappeared at the corner of the alley, and Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Jiua followed him closely. The first step was for him and Jiu to sneak into the Eternal Paradise, while the other three followed behind them, with crows passing on messages. Especially crows, which are a common small animal, and no one would doubt them. Fuzugawa Shia and Iguro Obanai wore night clothes and walked on the roof as if it were flat ground, without even a trace of sound. After many twists and turns, the boss brought Kiritani Sento and the others to a house in the suburbs. The dark wooden house seemed to be abandoned. The boss pointed at the wooden house and said, "This is where the believers are temporarily staying. I heard that they will leave here the day after tomorrow. Whether you can join in depends on you. I won't refund the money." Kiritani Sento and Fukuoka Jiu helped the boss unload the packed food, and then the boss pushed the cart away. Kiritani Sento knocked on the creaking door, and soon a man in a black robe pushed open the door. He immediately closed the door when he found a stranger. Kiritani Sento pushed the door forcefully, and the man took several steps back before he could stabilize himself. He was a little flustered. After all, the founder had warned everyone not to show off. Before the believer could speak, Kiritani Sento grabbed the other's thigh like a tiger pouncing on its prey, and this action confused the believer. What the hell? How did it suddenly appear? Kiritani Sento cried with snot and tears, "Family, I finally found my family. Have a calm attitude to live happily. There is no need to force yourself to do things that make people uncomfortable or painful." The first time I heard this sentence, I was deeply fascinated by it. It is such an inspiring word. We survived by it. It's so hard to find you, my compatriots. Kiritani Sento winked at Tomioka Jiu frantically. When facing believers, you have to treat them as family members. You have to act into this kind of spiritual belief to win sympathy. As for the sentence that sounds like chicken soup, it is that the doctrine of the Eternal Paradise is also the code that the boss must say when delivering food. Tomioka Jiu simply hugged the other leg of the believer. Kiritani Sento can be said to be a human story machine. He directly made up a complete background for himself and Tomioka Jiu. The degree of tragedy is really outrageous. What about losing both parents at a young age, being looked down upon by others, raising a stupid brother alone, etc.? The main point is inspirational, the main point is close to the doctrine. Not far from the wooden house, Fushagawa Shia and Iguro Obanai hid in a lush tree. Iguro Obanai's mouth kept twitching, and he wanted to plug his ears immediately, because Kiritani Sento's wailing seemed to pierce the space. Well, this lecherous rabbit can really act. If I can't do it, I'll be totally ashamed. Fuzugawa Shima immediately took the telescope from Iguro Obanai, looked into the yard, and then silently returned the telescope to Obanai. As expected of a rabbit, I admire you very much. Fuzugawa Shima's respect was all written on his face. He really paid too much to kill the demon. The wind in the suburbs was not very strong, but this believer stood alone in the wind. Those who can fully repeat the doctrine must be compatriots and family members. He can empathize with the feeling of not being understood by others and being treated as an alien by others. The believer in black robes burst into tears. He helped up Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Jiu and hugged them directly. "Family, you have worked hard." As soon as the voice fell, endless sighs poured into Kiritani Sento's ears like a tide, and he felt bad. Then, the cultist stuffed some money into Kiritani Sento's pocket. He held Kiritani Sento's shoulders solemnly and said something hopeful. He said angrily, "Fellow countrymen, don't give up hope, live strong with your silly brother." Hey! Now it was Kiritani Sento's turn to be confused. Could it be that my acting was not realistic enough? This shouldn't be the case. My dear family member, I want to bring my brother to join you. What does this mean? Hey! The founder has ordered that our Eternal Paradise Church can only accept 250 people, and the teachers recruited this time must be female. I'm really sorry. Oh my god, you can still play like this, Doma, you are so playful. Kiritani Sento now wants to invite the damn Doma to bask in the sun. The gender is really stuck. Bang. The teacher closed the door with regret on his face. He has been teaching for so many years, and this is the first time he has seen someone who implements the doctrine so thoroughly. It's a pity that he is a man, what a pity. What a pity, what a pity. Why is it a man? If Tomioka Jiyu hadn't pulled him back, Kiritani Sento would have rushed in to argue. What's wrong with men? What's wrong? It's gender discrimination. Damn it, I'm so angry. It's just a mistake. Kiritani Sento had thought of many possibilities, but he didn't expect that gender was the problem. We are trying to find a way. It was a mistake not to bring female team members. Tomioka Jiyu said very calmly. Then he pulled Kiritani Sento away from the wooden house. Anyway, he already knew the specific location. If it didn't work, he would secretly follow these followers. It's just that the information will be much less, and the plan discussed before can only be changed. The lights in the boss's room were still on. Opposite him sat a man in a black robe, and you could vaguely see his fair skin and sharp nails. Sir, the 5 people who came during the day are indeed suspicious. They asked me about the Eternal Paradise cult. The boss repeated everything to the black-robed man, but the black-robed man asked, which room do they live in? The boss was frightened by the sinister murderous intent, and he stammered, second floor, the 2 at the very innermost. Before the boss could react, the black-robed man disappeared in front of him. Chapter 70. Suddenly Kyojuro pulled out the Nichiren sword in his hand, and said to the corner of the room, "Come out, evil spirit." As soon as Kyojuro finished speaking, brown sawdust flew out, and finally gathered into a charming human figure. Mu Luo stared at Kyojuro with disdain. Since he was left behind, it meant that he was the weakest of the 5. Not bad, you can actually find me. Remember my name, I am Mu Luo. Kyojuro didn't want to talk at all. Why is this ghost so inexplicable? She seems very confident, so she must be very strong and can definitely hone herself. Ha ha ha. Come on. I saw Mu Luo pressing her hands to the ground, and countless grey vines entangled Kyojuro. Seeing that Kyojuro couldn't move, Mu Luo used her taunting skills to the fullest. She pointed at Kyojuro and sneered, "You're just an idiot who can only smile foolishly." Baga. Just when Mu Luo was arrogant, a bright firelight pierced the silence of the guest room, and the vines that originally trapped Kyojuro disappeared without a trace. Mu Luo looked at her right hand flying away with a look of horror on her face. She didn't even see the other person's figure clearly. "It's the pillar, run! Move quickly!" Mu Luo looked at her body blankly, and then let out a piercing scream. Her limbs had been cut off long ago. The reason why Kyojuro didn't kill her was because he needed to ask for some information about upper rank 2. Ah! Mu Luo's eyes were red. Her limbs had long recovered. The blood demon art, the vine binding, was activated. She no longer dared to underestimate the human in front of her. Kyojuro took a deep breath, and swung out the flame-breathing one form, and countless sword winds fell on Mu Luo. The boss downstairs wrapped himself in a quilt, shivering in the quilt, and complained at the same time, "It's over, the store is going to be ruined, woohoo. What kind of people are the Eternal Paradise sect? They are simply monsters." Boom! Mu Luo, who had no limbs, fell in front of the boss. Her eyes were full of despair. Even if she took the job of the second master, her life would be gone. That red-haired man was too perverted. He swung the sword until he exhausted his physical strength and could not use his recovery ability. However, the boss in front of the boss gave her hope. The endless appetite stimulated Mu Luo's cells, and she opened her bloody mouth and bit the boss. The boss had never seen such a battle. He was so scared that his limbs were weak, his face was pale, and he couldn't move at all. "Save me, I don't want to die. If I had known, I wouldn't be greedy for money." The boss' desperate voice echoed, "If I had known, I wouldn't have accepted the monster's money." But a roundhouse kick suddenly flashed by, and Mu Luo was forcibly embedded in the wooden wall. Mu Luo and the boss were both dumbfounded. What just flashed by? Kiritani Zantu reluctantly pulled open the quilt and said to the boss in front, "If I had known now, why didn't I do it in the first place?" "Hey!" Fuzue immediately grabbed the boss's collar and roared angrily, "Why did you lie to us? That's a ghost, damn it!" Iguro Obana leaned aside, not wanting to pay attention to the boss. He was afraid that he would not be able to help but beat this guy up. At this time, the eldest brother also jumped down. He was a little surprised that the rabbit and the brother Yeong were still there. Kyojuro asked in confusion, "Rabbit, did you fail?" Kiritani Sento sighed and explained, "They only accept women. Is the gender card so rigid?" Kyojuro was stunned. "What kind of reason is this?" The boss looked up at the ceiling and then at the floor. The broken level made him feel distressed. My store." Then the boss fainted all of a sudden. "You." Fusewikawashima raised and lowered his fist. Bullying ordinary people is not his style. Kuro's heart was half cold. 5. These 5 can't all be pillars? They seem to be looking for the Eternal Paradise cult. Could they be trying to deal with Lord Shangni? Moro silently retreated into the wall and prepared to escape. But in just a breath, 5 sun wheel swords were placed on different parts of her body. "Kill you! Damn it, I'm going to kill you!" Fusewikawashima and Iguro Obanai stared at Moro with murderous intent. Moro now deeply understood what it meant to be weak, pitiful, and helpless. Kiritani Sento put away his knife and took out a test tube from his waist. He shook the test tube in front of Moro and introduced it with a smirk. "This is the poison of the wisteria flower. If you take a bite, you will first feel the pain of burning fire, then your limbs will rot, and then it will rush straight to your brain inch by inch, he he he." Moro was trembling with fear, and couldn't figure out who the ghost was for a moment. "You, don't come over here. Tell us about Doma, or you know." As soon as Kiritani Sento finished speaking, Murao became fierce in an instant. She rushed towards Kiritani Sento regardless of life and death, and shouted, "Impossible, don't even think about harming the adults." The next moment, Fushigawashi's Shia's knife pierced Murao's neck. Kiritani Sento wanted to stop it but couldn't do it. He could only watch her turn into ashes. "Oh my! I can use a little illusion, it should be no problem to get the words." Fushigawashia then remembered that the rabbit had a special talent. He couldn't help it when he saw a ghost attacking people. Sorry. It's all my impulse." Kiritani Sento hugged Fushigawa Minoru and replied with a smile, "We are all brothers, don't mind. Think of other ways. The key is to get into the all-in-one paradise cult." The other 3 nodded, and the 5 men sat together and started to think of ways. Jiyu suddenly broke the quiet atmosphere. He slowly said, "Well, there are no female team members, but I heard about women's clothing, it must be possible." Kiritani Sento. Fushigawa Minoru. Iguro Obanai. Listen, how can you say such words, Jiyu, you are abnormal," Kiritani Sento complained in his heart. Everyone was silent for a few seconds, and turned their eyes to Kiritani Sento. "If you want to say who is the most handsome among the 5, it must be the rabbit." A bad feeling suddenly rose in Kiritani's heart, and he asked tentatively, "Why are you looking at me like that?" The other 4 did not answer Kiritani, but explained to themselves. "I am disfigured, and I can't complete this mission," Iguro Obanai said. "Although I really want to help, I have too many scars on my body, Fushigawa Miya sighed. Kiritani Sento looked at his eldest brother again, and his eldest brother laughed and said, "You are a rough man, you can't pretend to be a woman." Kiritani Sento tried to dodge the hot eyes of the crowd, and suddenly found that his good brothers were a little perverted. "What's wrong?" "Waiting online, it's urgent." Chapter 71. Me too. Indeed, keep your promise. Fuzugawa Minoru and Iguro Obanai expressed their opinions. Kirotani Sento sighed, and then emphasized, "Don't tell Shinobu, it's all for the mission. You must remember my sacrifice." "Good brother." Kyojuro was the first to extend his palm, followed by Iguro Obanai, then Fuzugawa Minoru, and Jiyu didn't want to ruin the atmosphere, so he put his hand on top. Kirotani Sento took a deep breath and put his hand on top of the 4 people's palms. He shouted confidently, "Sure kill upper rank." "Sure kill." The 5 people said in unison. Taking advantage of the night, the Demon Slayer F5 left the hotel. Because of the change, they had to keep an eye on the teachers of the all-in-one paradise cult. The next morning, in front of the clothing store, Kiritani Sento stood at the door of the store and hesitated to go in. It seemed that there was something scarier than the waxing moon in the store. Rabbit, think twice. You can't be a cross-dresser. It's like a pervert. After a psychological struggle comparable to World War II, Kiritani Sento pushed Jiyu into the store. The naive Jiyu didn't realize the seriousness of the situation. He only knew that it was the rabbit who asked him to help. It wasn't until the rabbit pulled Jiyu to the salesperson that he realized that he was cheated. Kiritani Sento came to the saleswoman and whispered, "Give us a set of women's clothes and put on some makeup. The price is not a problem." Kiritani Sento said it without blushing. It wasn't because he was so thick-skinned, but because the disaster-removing mask gave him courage. Kiritani Sento was very grateful for his wit at this moment. He was really witty. Fortunately, he wore a mask. Although customers are king, the clerk's first reaction is to call the police. What should I do if I encounter a pervert? Kiritani Sento didn't want to waste too much time, so he simply left 2 stacks of money. The clerk asked weakly, "Are you sure?" "Very sure." Because Kiritani Sento's price was very reasonable, the store manager came out in person after a while. Unlike the doubtful clerk, the store manager flattered him in a different way. The store manager also thoughtfully arranged a private room for the 2 of them, which happened to have a large mirror. After changing his clothes, Kiritani Sento walked in front of the mirror. The silver kimono was covered with snowflake-like patterns, and the silver high ponytail was like a galaxy. The red lips were as hot as fire, and the red eyes added an exotic style. Very beautiful. Tomioka Jiyu suddenly came behind Kiritani Sento. "Damn it! I'm a man. Kiritani Sento, wake up." In just a few seconds, Kiritani Sento had already greeted Doma in his heart in a friendly manner countless times. "Doma, I'm going to chop you into 8 pieces, you pervert who only likes to eat women." An evil idea took root in Kiritani Sento's heart. He must make Doma regret coming to this world. Inadvertently, Kiritani Sento caught a glimpse of Jiyu in the mirror. He had to admit that Jiyu was very talented in this area. The long hair like a waterfall reached the waist, and the deep blue eyes seemed to hide a whole lake, where he saw what calmness was. The black kimono showed a pattern of flying birds, and the figure was also perfect. The clerk was stunned. Although the figure was padded, who was the woman? Kiritani Sento put on his mask again and gave the waitress a lot of tips. He emphasized, "Don't tell anyone. We need this for the performance, understand?" "Yes." The waitress answered straightforwardly, "I understand everything." Looking at the confused look in the waitress's eyes, Kiritani Sento was a little uncertain, but he had to pull Tomioka Jiyu away. Watching the 2 people leave, the waitress whispered with emotion, "Rich people play differently." Even with masks, Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Jiyu still became the most handsome guys on the street. They had to speed up and walk out of the city. Near noon, Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Jiyu returned to the sad wooden house. Kiritani Sento's outfit stunned Iguro Obanai and the other 2. Iguro Obanai complained, "You must have been a woman in your previous life." Kiritani Sento replied angrily, "You were a snake in your previous life, get out of here." Iguro Obanai deliberately provoked Kiritani Sento and said mockingly, "Should I call you Ginkgo-chan now?" With a bang, the snake pillar he flew out directly. Seeing the sacrifice of Kiritani Sento, Iguro Obanai didn't fight back. Kiritani Sento sighed and knocked on the door of the wooden house with courage. The man in black robe opened the door again. He looked at Kiritani Sento in a panic and asked immediately, "Do you want to join the Eternal Paradise?" "No need to exchange secret codes." The other party answered the question directly, "You 2 have passed, pack up and follow me, it's too late. The bishop who came with me is missing, we can't stay here." Kiritani Sento almost spit out a mouthful of blood. "I acted so hard that night, and today I joined without asking. Is gender so important?" Kiritani Sento didn't expect that killing Amuro would have such a big response. The believers left Fukushima that night. He and Jiyu also put on black robes. They followed closely behind the team. Taromaru would circle behind the team from time to time, followed by other people's crows. About half a month later, after walking through a complex mountain road that was no less complicated than entering the headquarters, the 2 followed the team into a valley. The gurgling water was clear to the bottom, and the clear water like silver bells flowed out from the mouth of the valley. Countless cherry blossoms bloomed on both sides of the valley. The sun seemed to be playing hide-and-seek, half hiding in the clouds. Kiria Sento and Tomioka Jiyu were shocked by the scene in front of them. This place was simply a paradise, but it was a pity that the owner of the paradise was an unforgivable monster. However, it must be said that this place is very suitable for the existence of ghosts, because the light is not very good, and Kiryu Sento wondered why the cherry blossoms can bloom so well. In addition to the beautiful scenery, a quaint traditional Japanese building was hidden in the smoke. Just from the exposed corner, it can be judged that it must be a magnificent building. The black-robed archbishop pointed to the hillside and said excitedly, "Look, everyone, that's the statue of the patriarch. He is the messenger sent by the gods to the world, and he can dispel all your doubts." As soon as he finished speaking, the archbishop knelt down toward the hillside with a pious look on his face, and others followed suit. Chapter 72. Kiritani Sento was speechless. How firm were the beliefs of these guys? They had been kneeling for half an hour. On a mound not far from the entrance, Kyojuro stared at the entrance, while Fushigawara Minoru and Iguro Obanai lay leisurely on the grass. Fushigawara Minoru held a piece of grass in his mouth, glanced at the entrance of the valley, and then asked, "Brother, are the rabbits still kneeling?" Kyojuro nodded, and then complained, "I don't understand why they are so pious to an evil ghost." The elder brother's words reminded Iguro Obanai of his family. He hated ghosts and humans who were in cahoots with ghosts. He suddenly sat up and said viciously, "I really want to beat them up, a bunch of fools." Kyojuro waved his hand. He thought those ordinary people were just deceived. Before Kyojuro could speak, he saw the thumb of Kiritani Sento from the telescope, which meant that they were going in. Kyojuro hurriedly informed the two people around him, "The rabbits are moving, everyone get ready." The three of them quickly sneaked into the bushes. It must be admitted that the place chosen by the evil ghost is quite secluded, and even the grass is as high as a person. Along the clear stream, the team of believers walked towards the end of the valley. About an hour later, everyone walked up the hillside. A 5-meter-high gate is inlaid in the dark red wall. The luxury can be seen from the decoration alone. Passing through the gate, what comes into view is an extremely empty square. Except for the giant statue standing in the middle of the square, there is nothing else. The statue is about 10 meters high. It is a young man wearing a hat and a cape behind him. The eyes of the statue are lifelike, giving people a feeling of seeing through the world. The black-robed deputy bishop slid to his knees and rushed to the statue. After seeing the statue, it seemed that his life was complete. "Everyone, look, this is the statue of the patriarch. The patriarch will not be back for a few days, you should worship his statue first." Kiritani Battle Rabbit. He really wanted to kick the bishop. This was too exaggerated. However, it must be admitted that these believers were very fierce. They carved this more than 10-meter-high statue of Doma with manpower alone. It can be seen that they really love it, but it can also be seen that they really know nothing. After worshipping for nearly an hour, Kiritani Battle Rabbit wanted to chop Doma all the time. This guy is really playing tricks. After worshipping, the black-robed deputy bishop began to introduce the eternal paradise. The doctrine of the eternal paradise is to live a happy life with a calm attitude. There is no need to force yourself to do things that make people uncomfortable or painful. The man specifically repeated the doctrine 3 times. There are only about 250 followers of the eternal paradise, because the founder will only choose those who are loved by the gods. Kiritani Sento was very contemptuous of this. After all, it was because the boss liked to hide. As his employee, the boss didn't like any of his subordinates to be too ostentatious. The black-robed deputy bishop talked a lot, 90% of which was praise for Doma, and Kiritani Sento's ears were about to be calloused. After the speech, the deputy bishop walked into the main hall. The teachers he brought back were waiting in the same place. Kiritani Sento took a simple look. There were about 20 people this time, 15 of which were women, of course, including him and Jiyu. After a while, some formal believers came to help these newcomers. The one who received Kiritani Sento was a big sister with black braids. "Please come with me. This place is very big. Everyone will have their own room. Think of this place as your home." Kiritani Sento nodded. In order not to expose himself, he planned to speak as little as possible. The next day, life as a believer began. He got up at 7 in the morning, and everyone recited the doctrine and worshipped the statue of the founder in the square. This was a very boring thing and what Kiritani Sento hated the most. Unfortunately, it was difficult for Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Jiyu to operate during the day, so they had to familiarize themselves with the terrain at night. The believers of the eternal paradise have a very free life. After completing their work, they can move freely. But I didn't see Doma at all. I heard that he would be back in a few days. Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Jiyu both showed great strength, so they were responsible for chopping wood and carrying water. It was another late night. Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Jiyu were exchanging information in a secluded garden. The division of labor between the two of them was that each was responsible for half of the place. Tomioka Jiyu handed a map to Kiritani Sento and said calmly, "This is the map of the outside. It's not complicated here, and I didn't see any other ghosts." Kiritani Sento patted Tomioka Jiyu's little head and said with a smile, "Well done, Tsuda-chan." Tsuda-chan. Ha ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. Jiyu was simply invincible in women's clothing. Tomioka Jiyu's already paralyzed face became even more paralyzed, but he couldn't reach the level of Kiritani Sento's meanness. After thinking for a long time, Jiyu replied indifferently, "Ginko-chan, you are very cute. I won't let Shinobu Koko know." Kiritani Sento was extremely shocked. Jiyu actually refuted people. Oh my god! In shock, Kiritani Sento tied two maps to Terumaru's legs, one of which was the indoor map he was responsible for and the other was the outdoor map that Jiyu was responsible for. Fortunately, the teachers of the Eternal Paradise cult were very friendly and took the newcomers to familiarize themselves with the environment. It was too friendly for Kiritani and Tomioka Jiyu. If they were familiar with the environment by themselves, they would have taken a few days. After a brief exchange, Kiritani and Tomioka separated. They were afraid that they would be suspected if they stayed together for a long time. After Tomioka Jiyu left, Kiritani released Taromaru and disappeared into the night. But Kiritani did not return to his room. He walked through the corridor and came to a black door. The Eternal Paradise is divided into the main hall, the square and the residential area. This is the only room in the main hall that is locked. He has seen the other rooms more or less, but this room with a black door is the only one he has never been to. Kiritani always feels that there is some secret hidden in it. Kiritani Sento adjusted the non-existent glasses on his nose, pointed at the black door and said, "I really want only one. Let me, Detective Rabbit, dig out your truth." As soon as Kiritani Sento finished speaking, he took out a piece of wire from his arms. Chapter 73. Click. The spring in the lock made a crisp sound. Kiritani Sento carefully removed the padlock. He wanted to ensure that this room was the same as before, including the lock. Kiritani Sento gently pushed open the door. The black door seemed to be the entrance to hell, which was extremely terrifying. A gust of cold wind blew, and Kiritani Sento's body trembled. Suddenly, a hand covered Kiritani Sento's mouth from behind, and his heart instantly rose to his throat. Who else would come here at this time? Could it be that Doma came back? Thinking of this, Kiritani Sento broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't take the Nichiren sword today. Kiritani Sento clenched his fists. After all, the black shadow didn't do anything excessive, and the touch didn't feel like a ghost. SHH. It's me, Rabbit. Fuziwigawashima's voice finally put Kiritani Sento's heart at ease. He broke free and complained, "You damn hedgehog head, are you going to scare me to death?" Kiritani Sento opened his mouth wide, but his voice got stuck in his throat. After all, making loud noises is not advisable. Fuziwigawashima shook the map in his hand and explained apologetically, "The three of us are here to familiarize ourselves with the terrain. No one knows. But you, what are you doing sneaking around?" Kiritani Sento suddenly held his forehead and pointed to the dark room and said, "Young boy, the truth is in it." Fuziwigawashima tilted his head and took a look. Maybe because it was completely closed, there was not even a trace of moonlight in that room. But his curiosity was instantly aroused. This is how people are. The more mysterious things are, the more exciting they are. Kiritani Sento and Fushigawara Minoru walked into the room together. After closing the door, Kiritani Sento lit the handheld lantern in his hand. The dim candle light flickered in the darkness, and soon, the black was completely covered by dim gold. Kiritani Sento and Fushigawara Minoru were stunned, and fear and disgust instantly filled their hearts. As members of the Demon Slayer Corps, they had naturally seen the scene of evil spirits gnawing at human bodies. They had long been accustomed to that kind of bloodiness, but this room was indeed a bit heavy. Although there was no trace of blood, it was creepy. In the closed room of more than 10 square meters, 3 black cabinets as high as the wall were close to the wall. Each cabinet had about 20 layers, and each layer was divided into many compartments. From these items, everything seemed so normal, even a little simple. However, those compartments were not filled with antiques, but with white bones and countless empty skulls. From the outside, every skull here is female, and there are at least hundreds of small compartments in the room. Kiritani Sento knew that Doma was a pervert, but he didn't expect that he would collect human skulls. It was so hateful. Fear and disgust only lasted for a moment. Fushigawara Minoru was furious and said with gritted teeth, "This Doma deserves to die. Even if he dies 10,000 times, it's not enough to atone for his sins. They were all living beings. I will chop him off sooner or later." Fushigawara Minoru kept scolding Doma. Perhaps only by killing Doma can these unjustly killed souls rest in peace. Kiritani Sento walked silently to the shelf opposite the door. In the middle of this shelf was a very abstract pot. The skull on the pot was completely different from the others because it had hair. The inscription on the pot caught Kiritani Sento's attention because the name was Aoba Hashabira. Hashabira, Kiritani Sento muttered. This surname is so familiar, isn't it Zuza's surname? Could it be? Thinking of this, Kiritani Sento couldn't help but take a step back. This is Zuza's mother. Damn Doma, damn it, you bastard. Kiritani Sento clenched his fists and tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart. If you can kill Doma alive, bury them all. Ah! Kiritani Sento sighed lightly, with unspeakable sadness between his eyebrows. Because of the evil spirits, how many people, like Zuzu, lost their mothers and homes? Fushigawara Shima nodded and said softly, "Yes. They shouldn't be treated like this, but we will kill that hateful guy alive." Kiritani Sento and Fushigawara Shima left the room with heavy hearts. The so-called secret was too heavy for the two of them. That was an unbearable weight for life. As soon as they entered the backyard garden, Taromaru landed on Kiritani Sento's shoulder and immediately warned, "Warning! Warning! There is a ghost approaching here. Inside." Without saying anything, Fuzugawa Shima immediately picked up the disabled Kiritani Sento and hid in the flowers nearby. Coincidentally, as soon as the two hid in, a figure jumped in from outside the wall. Under the moonlight, the two saw each other's appearance clearly. The short white oak hair swayed in the wind. In the white, there was a place that seemed to have been drenched in blood, and the black edges spread out around. He wore a red top and black trousers, and the triangular hat and black cloak symbolized his identity. The rainbow eyes sparkled in the moonlight, but there was no emotion in them. Unlike Yiyong's expressionless face, this was a natural indifference. The most conspicuous thing was that his left and right irises were engraved with the words upper rank and 2. It was Doma, the founder of the Eternal Paradise cult, upper rank 2. The eyes of Kiritani Sento and Fushigawara Minoru were as big as eggs, because the demon they wanted to kill the most was right in front of them, but they had to suppress the killing intent. They also had to find a way to make Doma drink the wisteria poison, and weaken Doma's strength as much as possible. Doma suddenly turned his head and looked at the hiding place of Kiritani Sento and Fushigawara Minoru. His seemingly calm eyes made Kiritani Sento and the other two nervous. The two looked at each other, and Fushigawara Minoru tightened the Nikaran sword at his waist. Doma was indeed searching for something, and slowly his sight shifted to the ground. Doma pretended to be very happy and said, "So it's here." When he was still a human, Doma could not understand human emotions. He had no emotional fluctuations since he was a child, and he could not feel any joy, anger, sorrow, or happiness. He thought that human emotions were illusory, so he wanted to experience what emotions were. But in the end, he could only pretend to have various emotions. Unfortunately, pretending is just pretending. Doma picked up the skull that fell on the ground, placed it under the moonlight, and admired it carefully, even praising it. "What a great work of art! It's worth collecting." Kiritani Sento and Fuzugawa Miya breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that there is no need to start a war now. Chapter 74. Fuzugawa Shima realized that his back was soaked with sweat. The pressure of the upper string was 10,000 times greater than that of the lower string. Although he was extremely resentful in his heart, his body was automatically alert. Kiritani Sento patted Taromaru's little head, and Taromaru understood immediately. It flew high into the sky and shouted 3 times. This was the signal agreed upon by the 5 people in advance. Once the target appeared, the crow would shout 3 times. In order to eliminate unnecessary suspicion, Taromaru flew away from the mansion directly. "He is very strong." Fuzugawa Shima, who always refused to admit defeat, said slowly. "Indeed, he is upper rank 2 after all, and he has lived for hundreds of years." Fushigawara Shima's face was solemn, but his eyes were firm. But I won't give up. Kiritani Sento stretched out his fist and said with a smile, come on, wait for my signal. Fushigawara Shia smiled and bumped fists with Kiritani Sento, but he had a new awareness in his heart, that is, if he died, he would die before the rabbit. Fushigawara Shia stood up gently, patted Kiritani Sento on the shoulder, and warned, rabbit, be careful. Yet, before Kiritani Sento could say anything, Fushigawara Shia had already climbed over the wall and left. He couldn't stay too long, otherwise it would interfere with the plan. It was not until dawn that Kiritani Sento returned to his room. Sure enough, he received a notice the next morning, saying that the founder would personally preside over the ceremony for the initiation of new members this morning. The previous recitation of doctrines and worship of statues were all cancelled, and all the believers gathered in the hall. There were many futons on the floor of the hall, but the first 20 futons were completely different from the rest. They were all white, symbolizing the newlyweds. Kiritani Sento and Tomioka Gyuo looked at each other and nodded at the same time. Kiritani Sento patted his chest and told Gyuo not to worry, while Tomioka Gyuo nodded slightly. The two found the most remote corner and sat down. Although it was called remote, it was actually in the second row. In any case, the two had to face Doma. When everyone came together, the black-robed archbishop held a lotus engraved with pink and purple lotus and green lotus leaves, which was filled with clear water. The black-robed archbishop cleared his throat and said, welcome to the patriarch, everyone salute. The archbishop's loud voice was mixed with a shrill voice, like a eunuch. As soon as the archbishop finished speaking, everyone knelt on the futon in unison, accompanied by the excited voices of the crowd. Welcome to the patriarch. Kiritani Sento raised his head slightly, and the curtain on the side of the hall was just opened, and Doma walked out slowly with a gentle smile on his face. Looking at the worshippers, there was no sense of accomplishment in his eyes, but only disdain, as if the people here were not as good as a bug in his eyes. Human beings are really a regrettable existence, so sad, these poor bugs, Doma complained in his heart. Doma suddenly snorted. Then he whispered, this woman is really interesting, she dares to look me in the eye. Oh my god, oh my god. How did they meet eyes, so embarrassing, it's over. Kiritani Sento immediately lowered his head. He really didn't want to attract Doma's attention, so he put on a mask. Doma tried his best to suppress the contempt in his heart and said with a smile, everyone, get up quickly. Thank you, Lord Patriarch. After receiving Doma's order, everyone sat back on the futon. At this moment, a female believer suddenly shouted, so handsome, so gentle, long live Lord Patriarch. The believer fainted because she was too excited. Kiritani Sento. Tomioka Gyuo. It's outrageous, it's really outrageous. He opened the door to outrageousness. It's so outrageous that he fainted. Alas! This scene reminded Kiritani Sento of the various fanatical fans of those young handsome guys in his previous life. It was simply unreasonable. The archbishop waved his hand, and then two people in grey robes carried the woman away. The archbishop brought the basin of water to Doma and said respectfully, Lord Patriarch, please baptize the new family members. Tisk. So boring, so boring. Doma reluctantly put his hand into the basin. Although he was unwilling, he still had a fake smile on his face. Starting from the first row, the newcomers walked up to Doma one by one, and Doma gently sprinkled the so-called holy water on their faces. At the same time, he repeated, welcome to join the Eternal Paradise cult. It was soon Tomioka Gyuo's turn. Seeing that the other party was wearing a mask, Doma immediately became interested and asked, Ms., can I take off your masks? Gyuo Tomioka nodded, and Doma immediately took off Gyuo's mask, and then praised, such a beautiful face should not lose its radiance, please live with confidence. Gyuo Tomioka had no idea why Doma said these inexplicable words, but he still nodded to show his approval. There was nothing wrong with listening to the rabbit. When facing Doma, nod more and don't speak. After Gyuo Tomioka was baptized, Kiritani Battle Rabbit took off his mask directly, and his silver hair also spread out. As the person with the strangest hair color in the audience, Kiritani Battle Rabbit naturally attracted everyone's attention, including Doma. What a beautiful newcomer! Yes, yes. Silver and shining, like stars. The followers below all sighed with emotion. Kiritani Sento tried his best to suppress the helplessness in his heart. If he had dyed his hair earlier, this scene he least wanted to see would have happened. Kiritani Sento immediately calmed down. He knew that although Doma had money, status, and a nearly immortal body, he could not feel any special feelings, so he often changed his partners and played a love game like a child. For example, Zuzu's mother was one of them. Doma had never thought of eating her, but unfortunately she discovered the fact that Doma was a cannibal. As the saying goes, capable people never complain about the environment. Kiritani Sento decisively used the beauty strategy in the 36 stratagems. But just thinking about it makes me want to vomit. The beauty turned out to be me. Doma sprinkled holy water as usual, but he kept staring at Kiritani Sento's ruby-like eyes. Doma suddenly grabbed Kiritani Sento, then lifted his chin, smiled and praised, "Your eyes are definitely the most beautiful eyes I have ever seen. I like you very much." "I don't like you at all, I'm going to chop you up, you disgust me, damn Doma." After cursing Doma's ancestors in his heart, Kiritani Sento smiled and nodded, pretending to be shy. "Master, you've said too much." Chapter 75. From today on, this is the saint of the eternal paradise. As soon as Doma finished speaking, all the believers worshipped Kiritani Sento. Saint. After the announcement, Doma left alone. The deputy leader was promoted to leader. He respectfully took Kiritani Sento to the side hall to learn some things about the saint. The bishop pulled out a chair for Kiritani Sento to sit on, and he stood aside with a respectful look. "Saint, although you are a newcomer, the patriarch has taken a liking to you. Your current status is second only to the patriarch. Just tell me if you have anything to say." Kiritani Sento nodded in response. Everything was so bizarre. He was originally an undercover agent, but now he has inexplicably become the second in command of the eternal paradise. The saint lady, I'm a man, but when he thought of Doma's expression when he knew he was a man, Kiritani Sento began to look forward to it. Since Kiritani Sento couldn't get away, Tomioka Jiyuhu spread the news. Taromaru flew over the wall and landed in a cherry blossom forest. Kyojuro took down the note, which read, "Rabbit has become a saint, he will find a way to make Doma take poison, 3 crows will be the signal." Kyojuro had a question mark on his face, which made Fushigawara Shia and Iguro Obanai very confused. The two hurriedly took the note and read it. The next second, the two covered their stomachs and laughed. As expected of a rabbit, a disguise can make ghosts crazy, ha ha ha. Ginkgo-chan. Kyojuro tied the reply letter he had written to Taromaru, and then the three of them needed to wait quietly for the secret signal. In the next 2 days, as a saint, Kiritani Sento officially went to work. His task was very simple, which was to notify believers to come to Doma to confide their inner feelings. In short, it was very simple, but the only advantage was that he could always stay by Doma's side, so that he had the opportunity to poison him. The sun moved away from the sky, and a full moon hung in the sky. The sound of cicadas passed through the treetops from the grass tip, like a breeze blowing across the water. Slowly, the cicadas' chirping turned into a winding song under the moonlight, leaving a long string of resentment. Kiritani Sento also sat by the window with a resentful look on his face. He glanced at the gourd on his waist, which contained concentrated wisteria flower poison and a large amount of strong liquor to cover up the smell of wisteria flower poison. Creak! The wooden door suddenly made a sound, and Kiritani Sento turned his head and found nothing. When he turned around, Doma suddenly appeared under the window. He leaned on the windowsill with one hand and bit a flower in his mouth. Kiritani Sento was stunned. What kind of a shabby way to pick up girls is this? In Doma's eyes, Kiritani Sento was completely shocked by his surprise. It seems that humans are not so useless. What was the name of the last woman? He really liked her. Kiritani Sento took 2 steps back and pretended to be puzzled and asked, "Master, why are you not sleeping so late?" Doma sent the flowers to Kiritani Sento and whispered, "Ginkgo, the flowers are for you. I like your eyes very much, so I want to keep looking at them. You are simply a gift from God to me." As soon as he finished speaking, Doma didn't forget to blink. "I can't get you, Ginkgo." Doma was secretly delighted, as if he had mastered everything. Such beautiful eyes should be eaten while Ginkgo is alive. Thinking of this, Doma shook his head. He couldn't eat them, he couldn't eat them. He definitely couldn't eat people in front of her. He had to pay attention to his image. However, Doma's series of operations seemed so pale and powerless in front of the old driver, Kiritani Sento. It was just like a kindergarten kid showing off the multiplication table in front of high school students. At some point, Doma had flashed in front of Kiritani Sento, who pretended to be very flustered and glanced to the side. Doma had no human cognition at all. In his cognition, every believer worshipped him and they would never reject his love. This was a flattering and joyful thing for them, although he didn't know why he was happy. But this could guarantee him a stable source of food. How great women are! The nutrients they have can even allow them to grow fetuses in their stomachs. Only by eating more women can you become stronger. Unfortunately, you can't eat the woman in front of you. You have to experience human emotions from her. Church master, what do you want to do? Doma pretended to be very affectionate, but his artificial look made Kiritani Sento wanted to vomit. If it were any ordinary brainless believer, he would have been knocked unconscious by Doma. Ginkgo, I've liked you since the first time I saw you. Will you be my girlfriend? Kiritani Sento retreated to the side of the quilt at the speed of light. He was really scared. Imagine a grown man like you being confessed to by an evil ghost and a man. Please ask how much shadow he has in his heart. Hey! Doma seemed a little surprised. Did he make a mistake in his steps? Kiritani Sento resisted the feeling of retching and took out the gourd from his waist and handed it to Doma. Doma was a little confused. What was going on? Kiritani Sento hurriedly explained, Master, there is a custom in my hometown. When you meet your beloved, you have to let him drink the wine you brewed yourself. If you can't drink the wine I brewed, I can't agree to your request. While speaking, Kiritani Sento also cried like a little girl. Doma grabbed the wine gourd and pulled out the cork. The strong smell of wine was particularly pungent. Doma, who thought he had the other party under control, drank the poisoned wine in one breath. He had no idea that Kiritani Sento was in the atmosphere. Doma threw away the gourd and asked with a smile, Is it okay now? Kiritani Sento covered his forehead and restored his original voice. The rough male voice made Doma's scalp numb. Ha ha ha. I'm not pretending anymore, I'm going to show my cards. Just when Doma was confused, Kiritani Sento tore his kimono to pieces, revealing the black team uniform inside. Kiritani even made a face mischievously, Doma. I'm a man, are you surprised or not? I'm not a woman. Ha ha ha. Who would play this kind of love game with you, are you stupid? I'm here to chop you up. In terms of taunting, Kiritani can be said to have reached the level of perfection. After all, in the business of the Eternal Paradise cult, Kiritani's soul has suffered at least 100 million critical hits.